Now, the problem in this debate, everybody missed the boat. The church should have been in a position to say to Freud, well, of course, thank you very much. Yes, indeed, our symbolism is sexual. The steeples on our churches, the vesicle-shaped windows.
Welcome to the Alan Watts podcast, and I'm your host, Mark Watts. And today we're going to begin a series of talks on Eastern and Western religion. Today's is kind of a humorous talk. It's called Religion and Sexuality. It was recorded live in the mid-'60s, and it reflects his broad experience with Eastern and Western religions, and particularly his time in the church when he was an Anglican priest. During those years, he was trying to cultivate a greater awareness of the mystical aspects of Christianity. He left the church in 1950, but the experiences that he had stayed with him and became the material for many talks given in the early 60s. So this one is Religion and Sexuality, and our podcast is co-produced with the Ram Dass Be Here Now podcast network, and our music is provided by Moment Records featuring Zakir Hussain from the album Rhythm Experience. And now here's Alan Watts with Religion and Sexuality. You've been listening to Alan Watts with Religion and Sexuality. And for more information about this talk and many others that he recorded in the 60s, please visit us at alanwatts.org. Thank you for listening.
You see, there is something very curious happening right now. Those who have begun to wake up, those who have started to see through the game, are quietly disappearing. Not with speeches or noise, but simply stepping back, no longer interested in the usual performance. If you felt this yourself, if ordinary conversations, social events, and small performances have started to feel unbearable, what I'm about to say may ease you. This isn't a disorder. It isn't antisocial behavior. It's what naturally happens when a person wakes up. By waking up, I don't mean reading a few books on philosophy or having a nice idea about oneness. I mean that moment when you suddenly notice that most of what people are doing is sleepwalking. They move around as if on automatic, playing roles they didn't choose, repeating lines they didn't write. And when you're asleep yourself, this doesn't seem strange at all. You blend in, you talk about nothing and think it matters. You care about other people's opinions and believe they're important. You chase things with no real substance and call it success. But when the veil drops, everything shifts. It's like walking out of a dark cinema into daylight. You can try to go back and enjoy the film, but you can't anymore because you know it's just a projection. You've seen the screen for what it is. That's what's happening to people who are waking up now. They find they can't keep participating in the collective dream, not because they think they're better than anyone else, but because their system simply can't accept what it once believed. Society runs on an agreement, a shared decision to pretend the characters we play are who we are, to pretend that the opinions we've absorbed are personal truths, to pretend that all this rushing and seriousness is actually leading somewhere important. The whole play only works if everyone stays in character. But when someone wakes up, they stop playing. They forget the script. They look directly at the stage itself. And this makes others uncomfortable, because the awakened can see beneath the surface. They see the fear behind the confidence, the emptiness behind the busyness. The fact that most arguments aren't about what people think they're about at all. And so they step away, not out of rejection, but because they can no longer pretend the game is real. When someone shouts their outrage into the public square, the awakened person doesn't see an enemy. They see unconscious material looking for somewhere to land. When society splits itself into us and them, the awakened person understands that both sides are simply projections colliding with each other. And once you've seen that, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending it's serious business. You can't take sides with the same heat and certainty as before, because you know it's all just a way of avoiding the mirror. So what does one do in that position? You withdraw. Not because you've stopped caring, not because you hate people, but because staying in the game demands that you deny what you've come to understand. Every conversation asks you to act as if you haven't seen what you've seen. Every social situation expects you to wear an older version of yourself, a mask that no longer fits. And after enough time, something in you refuses. It simply says, stop. Stop pretending. Stop shrinking yourself just to keep up the act. Go where you can actually breathe. And let's be clear, this is not about avoiding life. It's not spiritual bypassing. It's not running away from the world because it's too hard. It's something much simpler and far more honest. It's the recognition that staying in unconscious environments slowly harms consciousness itself. It's like putting a living plant in a dark room. It might survive for a while, but eventually it withers. Being surrounded by people who are asleep isn't just uncomfortable, it's draining. You spend an enormous amount of energy holding your center while everything around you pulls you off balance. You filter out projections, resist getting swept into emotional currents, and keep your awareness clear while others drift in fog. And no one sees the work you're doing because it's invisible, but it's real, and it costs you energy. Eventually, you realize you're spending all your strength just trying to stay awake in places that keep pulling you back to sleep. And that's when the choice appears. You choose consciousness over belonging, truth over approval, your own clarity over the comfort of being accepted by those who can't yet see what you see. That's when the disappearing begins. The first thing to go is the noise. Social media, for example, becomes unbearable because you can feel its nature. It's a machine built to keep people unconscious. Scrolling, judging, comparing, getting outraged, getting distracted. If you're awake, it's like standing in a river of sewage. So, you stop. You log out, you delete the apps, you stop feeding the machine. And without anyone noticing, hours of your life quietly return to you. Then you start leaving social circles, not with resentment, not with grand announcements. You simply stop showing up. Because you begin to see that most social spaces are stages. People are performing their lives, performing success, performing confidence, performing happiness, performing their opinions, and you can no longer play that part. Your real self has emerged, and it has no interest in putting on a mask. Then you leave certain relationships, not because you suddenly stopped caring about people, but because many of those bonds were built on a version of you that no longer exists. The sleeping version. Once you've woken up, you find there's no shared language anymore. You're no longer living in the same world. They're still speaking from inside the dream, and you're no longer in it. Then comes the career. That's often the hardest part. Because society has tied identity to work so tightly that leaving a job can feel like leaving yourself. But when you awaken, something changes. You can't play along with a system you can see through. You can't pretend to care about things that don't matter to you anymore. You can't sell your energy to roles that require you to stay unconscious. So, you leave. Sometimes suddenly, sometimes slowly, but you do leave. Because to stay would mean to slowly suffocate the very awareness you fought to bring into being. Now, here's the part most people misunderstand. They think disappearing from the noise means you'll end up isolated, lonely, depressed. But for someone who's awake, the opposite happens. In solitude, the loneliness ends. Because loneliness isn't about being without people, it's about being unseen among them. Aloneness is different. Aloneness is clarity. It's the space where you no longer have to twist yourself into a shape that fits. When the awakened person withdraws, they discover something most never realize. They were never truly with other people in the first place. Physical proximity is not connection. Real connection happens only when consciousness meets consciousness. And when you're awake in a room full of sleeping people, there's no one to meet. But in solitude, away from the noise and the endless performing, you finally meet yourself. Not the version you rehearsed for others, not the mask that was trained to fit into the world, but the living, breathing awareness behind all of that. And that isn't lonely, that is coming home. In that quiet space, you can finally hear your own thoughts without the static of 1,000 other voices. You can feel your own emotions without carrying everyone else's. You can discover what you actually want, what you actually believe, who you actually are. This is what I call the hermit phase. And it's not optional. It's essential. You cannot transform while clinging to every old connection and expectation. A caterpillar does not become a butterfly in the middle of a crowd. It withdraws, it cocoons, it goes silent for a while. And in the same way, awakening requires a period of retreat, not as escape, but as integration. This is when all the unconscious material you've carried for years finally has space to surface, to be seen and to be released. They are healing the damage that came from years of pretending to be someone they were not. They are gathering the strength to stand on their own ground, even when the rest of the world is still asleep. And this is no small task. It is much harder than staying unconscious. Because when you are awake, you lose the luxury of blame. You can no longer project your pain onto others. You can no longer hide from yourself in busyness, noise, or drama. Everything you've buried comes to the surface, and you must face it. No one can do that for you. But here's the strange, beautiful thing. Once you've walked through that darkness, once you've integrated what you've avoided, made peace with your shadow, and found what's real inside yourself, you stop depending on the world for your sense of reality. You stop needing approval. You stop begging for belonging. You no longer need the crowd to tell you who you are. You have something better. You found yourself. And from that place, if you choose to return to society, you return differently. Not to dive back into the noise, but to offer a quiet alternative. You become what I call a border dweller. Someone who stands with one foot in the sleeping world and one in the awakened. You are present, but not absorbed. Available, but not dependent. Engaged, but not entangled. Maybe you help those who are just beginning to stir. Maybe you create art that cuts through the surface and touches something real. Maybe you speak or write in ways that remind others of what they've forgotten. Or maybe you simply live your life so honestly that your very presence becomes a quiet question in the minds of others. Is there another way to be? But you never go back to the old game. You can't. Once you've tasted awareness, you can't return to sleep. Once you've felt your authentic self, you can't go back to performing a part. Once you've seen through the illusion, pretending becomes impossible. Now, some will say, isn't this selfish? Shouldn't we stay and try to wake everyone else up? Shouldn't we fight to fix the system from the inside? But here's the plain truth. You can't give what you don't have. If you haven't awakened fully yourself, if you haven't done the hard work of integrating your own shadow, then you're just another unconscious person trying to wake up other unconscious people. And that only spreads more confusion, no matter how noble your intentions. The most honest thing you can do for the world is to wake up yourself. Do the deep, uncomfortable work. Become genuinely conscious. And only then from that steady ground can you offer something real to those who are ready. And understand this, most people aren't ready. Most don't want to wake up. They want the familiar dream, the roles, the comfort of the play. And that's their right. Your role is not to drag anyone out of their sleep. Your role is to wake up and to quietly make yourself available to those who are beginning to stir. That's why the awakened disappear, not out of bitterness or disdain, but because they need space to breathe. To live without having to constantly shrink themselves to make others comfortable. They find each other in quiet corners in small circles away from the stage. They build small pockets of sanity in a world still lost in its performance. And this isn't abandonment, it's responsibility. The world doesn't need more people reinforcing the dream. It needs people who've walked through it, woken up, and found something real. It needs living examples of authenticity. So if you feel the pull to disappear, if the noise, the games, and the performances no longer hold your attention, if you can no longer find yourself in the crowd, then listen to that pull. That is not weakness. That is your soul asking for space to grow. Do not resist it. Do not feel guilty. Do not force yourself to stay where you no longer belong. Withdraw. Rest. Be alone without apology. This is not permanent. You will return, but when you do, you won't be the same. You will return whole, clear, real. Someone who can offer consciousness instead of more performance. Use that solitude wisely. Do the work. Face your own darkness. Find what's real inside you. Because what the world actually needs is not more noise, not more preaching, not more performance, but people who have actually awakened. The spiritually awake are disappearing because they must. Because consciousness cannot deepen in places built to keep people asleep. Because authenticity cannot survive in constant performance. Because truth can't be found in collective lies. So if you are one of them, let yourself go. Withdraw without shame. Disappear without apology. Stand alone without feeling alone. Trust that this is an old pattern, older than any religion or philosophy. The way every human being who has ever awakened has walked. The caterpillar must dissolve before it can fly. The seed must break before it becomes the tree. And the awakened person must step away from the crowd before they can offer something real to it. This is not the end. It's the beginning. The beginning of consciousness that isn't borrowed from anyone else. The beginning of life lived from the center rather than from the script. And though the world may not understand it yet, it will. When it begins to stir, and when it does, people like you will already be there. Not as saviors, not as saints, but as quiet beacons. Pioneers. Carriers of something real. And that is enough.
You see, we spend most of our lives trying to get money, but very few ever stop to ask why they want it in the first place. We chase money as though it's oxygen, as though without it, we cannot live, breathe, or be happy. But have you noticed that the more desperate you are for it, the more it seems to run away? And when you finally stop running, when you stop chasing, it often seems to find its way to you effortlessly, like a bird that lands quietly on your shoulder when you're still. It's quite a curious thing. You want money because you want freedom, but in the chase for money, you often lose the very freedom you were seeking. You become anxious, impatient, and trapped by your own desire. You become like a man digging for water in the desert who forgets that the oasis was already inside him. Now, I want to tell you a secret that life has been whispering to you all along. The money comes faster when you stop needing it to come. When you stop begging the universe with the vibration of lack
and begin to live as though you already possess abundance, everything begins to flow differently. Because reality, my dear friend, is not responding to your words. It is responding to your state of being. When you say, I want more money, what you are really declaring is, I don't have enough. And that feeling, that inner frequency, is what the world mirrors back to you. The universe is not your servant. It is your reflection. And whatever you feel most strongly becomes the signal it sends right back. I remember once saying that desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. You see, that is the trap when you tie your joy, your sense of self, your peace of mind to the arrival of money. You postpone happiness indefinitely. You wait for the outside world to change before you permit yourself to feel whole inside. But reality does not work that way. Reality rearranges itself around the vibration you are embodying. Now, the moment you say, I will be happy when I have money, you are broadcasting to existence that you are not yet happy, and existence simply reflects that. It will keep giving you situations that confirm your belief. This is why people stay poor, not because of a lack of effort, but because of the emotional atmosphere they live in, the inner weather they keep repeating each day. But imagine for a moment if you reversed it. What if you decided to feel abundant before the money comes? What if you walked through life with the vibration of someone who already has more than enough? What if you practiced gratitude not as a trick to get something, but as a state of genuine recognition that life itself is already full? Here's the paradox. The moment you stop using gratitude to manipulate the future, it actually begins to change. When you are no longer thanking the universe because you want it to do something for you, and instead thank it because you realize it already has, you step into the creative flow that allows more to come easily. Most people think they must do something to attract abundance. But the real secret is not in the doing, it's in the being. When your inner world is aligned with wealth, when you think, feel, and act like a person who already has it, is inevitable that your outer world will rearrange to reflect that. Because what you truly are inside cannot help but radiate outward. Think of it this way. You do not get money by running after it, just as you do not catch your own shadow by chasing it. You align with the light, and the shadow follows naturally. Money is the same. It is the shadow of your inner vibration. It follows the light of your consciousness. And the brighter that light, the faster the shadow moves to you. You see, money is not a reward from life. It is an expression of energy, a symbol of exchange, an extension of flow. When you are in a state of openness, creativity, and service, when you are genuinely giving your energy to life in a joyful way, money flows naturally as part of that current. But when you contract, when you tighten up with fear or lack, you dam the river. You block the current that was trying to bring you more. And this is the great irony of abundance. The tighter you hold on to it, the less you have. The more you let go, the more you receive. When you understand this, you begin to see why some people seem to magnetize wealth effortlessly. It's not that they are more intelligent, or luckier, or blessed by fate. It's that they have stopped resisting life. They have stopped sending out signals of fear and scarcity. They are not trying to get, they are allowing themselves to be. Now, what does this mean in practical terms? It means that if you wish for money to come faster, you must stop worshipping it. You must stop seeing it as your savior. You must begin to see it for what it truly is, an echo of your inner abundance, a reflection of your relationship with yourself. Ask yourself, how do I feel when I think about money? If you feel tense, anxious, impatient, or guilty, those are the vibrations you are feeding into the field. That is the emotional music you are playing to the universe. And the universe always dances to your tune. If your song is one of desperation, it will send you experiences that match desperation. If your song is one of ease, gratitude, and joy, then it will send you experiences that match that too. So instead of asking, how can I get more money? Ask, how can I feel more abundant right now? Because that feeling is the real currency. Money follows the feeling, not the other way around. You don't wait for a heater to get warm before turning it on. You generate the warmth first. The same applies here. You don't wait for external wealth to create internal abundance. You create the inner abundance, and the external wealth appears as a consequence. Now, the modern mind finds this deeply uncomfortable because we've been conditioned to believe that hard work and struggle are the only valid ways to succeed. We are taught to grind, to compete, to strive. But the truth is, effort without alignment is wasted energy. You can row a boat tirelessly, but if it's facing the wrong direction, you'll never reach your destination. When you are aligned internally, when your thoughts, emotions, and actions are coherent, things begin to move swiftly, almost magically. Doors open without effort. Opportunities appear where none existed. People show up at the right moment. You call it coincidence, but it's simply coherence at work. The universe is a field of infinite intelligence, responding to frequency. Every thought, every emotion, every belief you hold emits a vibration. When your vibration says, I am abundant, the field mirrors it with situations that confirm that truth. But when your vibration says, I'm lacking, it reflects lack. You cannot deceive the universe. It doesn't listen to your words. It reads your energy. And so, money is not something you earn as much as something you allow. It comes through you, not to you. It flows through the channels of your belief, your gratitude, your openness, and your creativity. It comes faster when you stop pushing it away with resistance and begin to trust that it is part of the same flow that gives breath, sunlight, and life itself. When you truly grasp this, you'll understand why so many spiritual teachers speak about surrender not as a form of passivity, but as a deep act of trust. To surrender is not to sit and do nothing. It is to stop forcing things to happen. It is to stop resisting the natural rhythm of life. It is to know that you are already connected to everything you need, and that your only task is to align with it internally. You cannot attract abundance from a state of frustration. You cannot call in wealth from a vibration of need, because in that vibration, you are telling the universe that you are separate from abundance, and so you remain so. But when you relax, when you breathe deeply and truly feel that life itself supports you, money begins to flow toward you, not as a bribe, not as a prize, but as a natural expression of your trust. So, the doing that brings money faster is not doing in the conventional sense. It is not about hustling harder, or making more lists, or pushing yourself into exhaustion. It is the inner work, the aligning of your state with the energy of abundance. It's the silent practice of tuning your mind and emotions until they sing in harmony with prosperity. You don't need to manipulate the world. You need to harmonize with it. When you do, the world responds with synchronicity, grace, and ease. Now, let's talk about something even deeper, the energy behind the intention. Why do you want money? Truly? Most people say because I want to feel free or I want to feel safe. But freedom and safety are not things that come after money. They are the states that allow money to arrive. When you feel free now, the vibration of freedom attracts experiences that match it, including financial opportunities. When you feel safe now, the vibration of safety magnetizes circumstances that confirm your safety, including money. So you must become the thing you wish to attract long before it appears. This is the mystical law of resonance, the same law that governs sound, music, and even the orbits of planets. If you listen to an orchestra, you'll notice that every instrument plays in harmony when tuned to the same frequency. Life operates the same way. When you tune your consciousness to the frequency of wealth through gratitude, trust, and joy, everything around you begins to harmonize. People, events, and ideas tune themselves to your vibration, and suddenly, what once seemed impossible becomes effortless. But if your inner world is dissonant, if one part of you believes in abundance while another part clings to fear, you create interference. You send mixed signals to the field, and the universe does not know which one to reflect. That's why self-awareness is the foundation of manifestation. You must become aware of the stories you tell yourself about money, the fears you inherited, the limitations you absorbed, the beliefs that no longer serve you. Because your beliefs are not truths. They are choices you've repeated so often that they've hardened into reality. But the moment you see them clearly, they begin to dissolve, and in their place, new possibilities emerge. When you begin to observe your relationship with money without judgment, something remarkable happens. You start to see that the anxiety, the grasping, the need to control, none of it is truly about the money itself. It's about what you believe money will fix. Somewhere deep within, you've been taught that money is the bridge between where you are and the life you want. But the truth is much gentler, much more profound. The bridge is your consciousness itself. If your consciousness is rooted in fear, you could win the lottery tomorrow and still feel unsafe. You could have millions in your account and yet feel poor inside. You'd still check your balance, still worry about losing it, still carry that faint vibration of not enough. Because wealth is not the amount of money you have, it's the amount of peace you feel when you have it. So what truly brings the money faster? Paradoxically, it is the release of the need for it. It is the moment when you realize that money was never the goal. It was only the mirror reflecting how deeply you trust life. When you trust completely, you become like the ocean that never worries whether it will receive another wave. You simply exist in the rhythm of give and take, ebb and flow. Consider how nature operates. The tree doesn't demand sunlight. It allows the sun to reach it. The river doesn't force its current. It simply flows according to gravity. The flower doesn't chase the bee. It blooms. And the bee arrives naturally. Yet humans, with all their cleverness, have managed to complicate the very principle of abundance. We've turned life into a contest. And in that contest, we've forgotten how to receive. To receive is not an act of laziness, it is an act of openness. And that openness is born of trust. When you trust that life supports you, you are no longer trying to force things into existence. You become receptive to the infinite possibilities already surrounding you. You stop narrowing your vision to the single path you believe will make you rich, and instead begin to see the countless other ways abundance can reach you. I once said that the meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious, yet everyone rushes around in a panic, as though it were necessary to achieve something beyond that. This panic is the same one that makes you chase money. But if you pause, just pause and truly see where you are, you may notice that life is already taking care of you in thousands of invisible ways. The breath entering your lungs, the sunlight warming your skin, the way your body repairs itself without your command. These are all signs that abundance is already happening, here and now. When you feel that deeply, gratitude arises naturally. Not as a mental exercise, but as a spontaneous recognition of how miraculous it all is. And in that recognition, your vibration shifts. The desperate current of I need softens into I am provided for. The clenched fist opens, and suddenly the river of prosperity can flow again. So, if you wish to make money come faster, stop thinking of it as something outside of yourself. Begin to treat every thought, every emotion, every action as a form of energetic currency. Ask yourself, what am I investing my energy in today? Are you spending it on worry, on comparison, on self-doubt? Or are you investing it in creativity and generosity and trust? Because whatever you give your attention to grows. Money follows energy, and energy follows attention. That is the secret that the mystics and the physicists both agree upon. You are not a victim of circumstance, you are a participant in creation. Now, let's explore a simple shift that can transform your relationship with money almost overnight. Instead of asking, how can I get more? Ask, how can I give more? Not give more out of guilt, but out of abundance. Not because you feel obligated, but because giving affirms that you have more than enough. When you give freely, whether it's your time, your kindness, your talent, or your resources, you are declaring to the universe, I am abundant. And the universe, always echoing your state, responds in kind. It cannot help but fill the space you have opened. You become a conduit rather than a container, and the flow accelerates through you. But remember, giving must come from authenticity, not performance. If you give with the hidden hope that it will make you rich, the vibration of need still dominates, and the current remains slow. But if you give because you truly feel rich already, that energy becomes magnetic. People, opportunities, and ideas are drawn to that field of genuine abundance. Have you noticed how easy it is to trust people who are at peace with themselves? You can feel it even before they speak. Their presence radiates calm, their words carry weight, and their actions flow effortlessly. That is what money responds to. It flows toward coherence, confidence, and ease. It avoids confusion, desperation, and fear. So, your task is not to convince money to come. It is to become the kind of person money enjoys being around. You do this through presence, through awareness, through the simple act of bringing yourself back again and again to the truth that everything you need is already here in potential form. When you act from that knowing, your energy field becomes clear. You stop vibrating in two directions at once. You stop saying, I believe I can be wealthy, while secretly fearing that you can't. You begin to live from the state of I already am. That's when the miracles begin, not because the universe suddenly starts paying attention to you, but because you finally start paying attention to the universe. Now, let me tell you a small story, one that carries within it the essence of this whole teaching. There was once a man who lived in a small village. He worked tirelessly every day, hoping to save enough to build a better life. He counted his coins carefully, feared spending them, and went to sleep each night worrying that they would vanish. One day, a wise traveler passed through the village and said to him, "Why do you worry so much? The field you work in is full of gold." The man laughed. "Nonsense," he said. "I've worked that field for 20 years. There's only dirt and sweat in it." The traveler smiled. "Look again," he said. "Not with your eyes, but with your heart." The man was puzzled, but that night he sat quietly under the stars, and for the first time in years, he stopped worrying. He felt the cool wind, the hum of crickets, the quiet pulse of life around him. Something inside him softened. And the next morning, when he returned to the field, he noticed things he'd never seen before: the richness of the soil, the patterns of light, the gentle rhythm of the earth. He began to work differently, no longer with tension, but with joy. And within a year, his crops multiplied beyond measure. He realized then that the field had always been full of gold. It was his own vision that had been poor. You see, wealth does not come from outside. It comes through perception. When your eyes change, your world changes. And so, perhaps the greatest practice for attracting money faster is not affirmations, not strategy, not even meditation in the usual sense. It is awareness. Awareness of your own inner dialogue, awareness of the stories you tell about scarcity and struggle. When you see them clearly, you stop feeding them with belief. And in that very moment, your vibration shifts. Some people ask, "But Alan, if I stop worrying, if I stop caring so much about money, won't I become lazy? Won't I stop trying?" To that I say, no, you will finally begin living. For what we call laziness is often just the absence of fear. When you stop working out of fear, you begin creating out of love. You become more efficient, more inspired, and far more magnetic. Because action born of joy is infinitely more powerful than action born of worry. So here's what I suggest. Begin every morning with a moment of quiet acknowledgement. Before you look at your phone, before you check your bank account, close your eyes and say softly to yourself, "I am supported by life. I am connected to abundance. I am already enough." Feel it not as a mantra to fix something, but as a truth that is already here. Let that feeling expand in your chest until it fills your body. Then go about your day as if this were true. Spend money with joy, not fear. Speak about your goals with ease, not anxiety. Notice the small gifts life brings: a kind word, a smile, a new idea, and treat them as signs that abundance is flowing. Because it is. You will find that when you stop chasing, things begin to chase you. The phone rings, opportunities appear, coincidences multiply. This is not superstition, it is physics. The vibration you emit shapes the field around you. And when that vibration says, "I already have," the universe replies, "Indeed you do." Understand, though, that this is not a one-time trick. It is a way of being. You must keep returning to it every time your old conditioning tries to pull you back into fear. Every time you notice yourself tightening, judging, or doubting, simply pause. Take a breath. Remember the truth. Money is not your source. Life is. And life is infinite. As this awareness deepens, something even more extraordinary begins to happen. you start to see that what you really desired was never the money itself, it was expansion, expression, and experience. Money was just one of the ways life could deliver that. Once you realize that, the universe becomes infinitely creative in how it supports you. Sometimes the abundance comes as money. Sometimes it comes as opportunity, love, or insight. But it always comes. And in that realization, you are free. Because when you are no longer dependent on one form of abundance, you open yourself to all of them. You stop being a beggar at the door of life and remember that you are, in fact, life itself, endless, expressive, abundant. So the money comes faster by doing this, by being what you seek, by letting go of the constant effort to acquire and instead embody the state of already having, by relaxing into the present moment and trusting that life is intelligent enough to arrange itself on your behalf. You don't attract wealth by chasing wealth. You attract it by living richly rich in thought, in gratitude, in giving, in trust. And when you live that way, the external wealth has no choice but to match it. Remember, life does not reward desperation, it mirrors vibration. So practice joy now. Practice generosity now. Practice the feeling of abundance now. And soon, you will find that the money was never late. It was simply waiting for you to arrive at the right frequency. Because in the end, abundance is not something you pursue, it is what you are. And when you realize that fully, you'll laugh, as I often do, at the cosmic joke of it all, that you were never trying to get money. You were only trying to remember that you already had everything you needed to let it flow. You know, there comes a moment in many people's lives when everything suddenly feels utterly pointless. The job that once seemed important now feels like a meaningless charade. The relationships that once brought joy now feel like empty performances. The goals you were chasing now seem arbitrary and hollow. And you look at your life and think, what's the point of any of this? Why am I doing what I'm doing? What does any of it matter? This is not depression, necessarily, though it might look like it from the outside. This is something much more interesting. This is what happens when you wake up from the collective dream, when you start to see through the game that everyone is playing, when the meaning that you borrowed from society begins to dissolve, and you're left facing the raw question, what is the point? Now, most people respond to this feeling in one of two ways, and both are problematic. The first response is panic. They feel the pointlessness and immediately try to run from it, to distract themselves, to create new meanings, new goals, new purposes. They throw themselves into work, into relationships, into causes, into addictions, anything to avoid sitting with that uncomfortable feeling that nothing matters. The second response is resignation. They accept the pointlessness as a final truth and sink into a kind of nihilistic despair. If nothing matters, why do anything? Why get out of bed? Why engage with life at all? They become paralyzed by the very insight that could have freed them. But I want to suggest a third response, a response that's actually quite revolutionary. What if the feeling that everything is pointless is not a problem to be solved, but a doorway to be walked through? What if it's not the end of meaning, but the beginning of a much deeper kind of meaning? Let me explain what I mean. When you feel that everything is pointless, what you're really recognizing is that all the meanings you've been living by are invented. They're made up. They're stories that human beings have told themselves to make sense of existence. And there's nothing wrong with stories, but when you realize that they're just stories, that there's no cosmic necessity to any of them, something very important has happened. You've seen through the game. You've recognized that meaning is not found, it's created. And once you see this, you can never go back to the innocent belief that your job or your relationship or your cause has some inherent, absolute meaning. The spell is broken. And this feels pointless at first because you've lost the meanings you were borrowing from outside yourself. Society told you that success matters, that family matters, that progress matters, that leaving a legacy matters. And you believed it. You made these borrowed meanings your own and built your life around them. But now you've seen that these are just agreements, just collective stories that we've decided to take seriously. And once you see the arbitrary nature of these meanings, they lose their power over you. And yes, this creates a void, a sense of pointlessness. But this void is not the end. It's the beginning. You see, as long as you're living according to borrowed meanings, you're not really free. You're like an actor who's so identified with their role that they've forgotten their acting. You take the script seriously because you think it's real, because you think it matters in some absolute sense. But when you realize it's just a script, just a story, you're suddenly free to play the role differently, or to choose a different role entirely, or to write your own script. The feeling of pointlessness is the recognition of your freedom. It's the moment when you realize that you don't have to live according to anyone else's definitions of what matters. You're free to decide for yourself what's meaningful, what's worth doing, how you want to spend your brief time in this strange existence. But here's where most people make a mistake. They think that because nothing has inherent meaning, they now need to create meaning, to impose meaning on a meaningless universe. And so they go searching for their purpose, their passion, their mission. They think they need to figure out what their life is supposed to be about and then dedicate themselves to it. But this is just another trap. This is taking the feeling of pointlessness and trying to cover it up with a new story, a new meaning, a self-created purpose. And while this might work for a while, it's ultimately just another game, just another way of avoiding the deeper truth. The deeper truth is this: life doesn't need a point. Existence doesn't require justification. You don't need a reason to be here or a purpose to fulfill. The question, what's the point, is itself based on a misunderstanding, on the assumption that there should be a point, that meaning is something life owes you. But what if life is not a journey towards some goal, not a problem to be solved, not a story that needs a satisfying conclusion? What if life is more like music or dance? You don't listen to a symphony in order to reach the end. You don't dance in order to arrive somewhere. The point of music is the music itself. The point of dancing is the dancing itself. It's not going somewhere. It's already here, fully present in each moment. In the same way, the point of life is simply living, simply being, simply the experience of existence itself. Not for anything, not toward anything, but as an end in itself. This very moment, exactly as it is the point. This breath, this sensation, this thought, this feeling, this is it. There's nothing else you need to get to, nothing else you need to achieve, no higher meaning you need to discover. When you really understand this, when you truly see that life doesn't need justification, something remarkable happens. The feeling of pointlessness transforms into something else entirely. It becomes a kind of lightness, a freedom, a playfulness. If there's no ultimate point, if there's no cosmic significance to anything you do, then you're free to simply enjoy the process of living without the burden of having to make it mean something. You can work at your job without needing it to be your calling. You can love someone without needing them to complete you. You can pursue goals without needing to achieve them. You can create things without needing them to be important. You can play the game of life with full intensity while knowing it's just a game. This is what I mean when I say the feeling of pointlessness is a doorway. It's the doorway out of seriousness, out of the heavy burden of trying to make your life matter, out of the exhausting project of creating meaning. On the other side of that doorway is a kind of freedom that most people never experience. The freedom to live without needing life to be anything other than what it is. Now, this doesn't mean you become passive or apathetic. Quite the opposite. When you're no longer burdened by the need to make everything meaningful, you're actually more free to engage fully with life. You can throw yourself into activities with complete abandon, not because they matter in some ultimate sense, but simply because they're what's happening, because they're the form that life is taking in this moment. Think about a child playing. The child isn't worried about the meaning of the game. The child isn't asking, what's the point of playing? The child is simply absorbed in the playing itself, fully present, fully engaged. And then the game ends, and the child moves on to something else without any sense that the game needed to have a lasting purpose or significance. This is how you can live when you've walked through the doorway of pointlessness. You can engage with life fully and passionately, and then let it go and move on to the next moment, the next game, the next experience. Nothing needs to be permanent. Nothing needs to be ultimately meaningful. Everything can be enjoyed for what it is, in the moment that it's happening. But what about the big questions? What about death? What about suffering? What about the fact that everything you do will eventually be forgotten? That the universe will end? That nothing you create will last forever? Doesn't this make everything pointless? Only if you think the point of life is to leave a permanent mark, to create something that lasts, to be remembered. But why should that be the point? The sunset is beautiful, and then it's gone. The flower blooms, and then it wilts. The wave rises, and then it falls back into the ocean. Nothing about the temporary nature of these things makes them less valuable, less beautiful, less worth experiencing. In fact, it's precisely because things are temporary that they're precious. If the sunset lasted forever, would you still stop to watch it? If flowers never wilted, would you treasure them? The poignancy of life, its bittersweet beauty, comes from the fact that it's fleeting, that each moment happens only once, that everything is always already passing away, even as it's arriving. So when everything feels pointless, when you look at your life and can't find the meaning you once thought was there, this is not a crisis. This is an opportunity. It's the opportunity to stop living for some imaginary future point, some goal or achievement or legacy, and to start living for the sheer fact of being alive, for the immediate experience of existence. What do you do when everything feels pointless? You stop asking what the point is. You stop trying to justify your existence or prove your worth or make your life matter. You simply live. You breathe, you eat, you walk, you talk, you work, you play, you love, you create, not because any of it means something in the grand scheme of things, but because this is what life is. This is what's happening. This is the dance you're dancing. And in this surrender, in this letting go of the need for meaning, you might discover something surprising. You might discover that life becomes more vivid, more immediate, more alive when you stop trying to make it mean something. Colors are brighter when you're not worried about their significance. Food tastes better when you're not concerned with its purpose. Relationships are more intimate when you're not using them to fill some void. The pointlessness, when you really embrace it, becomes a kind of freedom. It's the freedom to be completely here, completely present, completely engaged with what is, without the overlay of meaning, without the weight of significance, without the burden of purpose. Let me tell you a Zen story that illustrates this. A student comes to the master and says, "Master, I've studied all the scriptures, I've practiced all the techniques, I've contemplated all the koans, but still, I don't understand. What is the meaning of life?" And the master says, "Have you eaten your breakfast?" The student says, "Yes." The master says, "Then go wash your bowl." You see, the student is looking for some grand cosmic meaning, some ultimate purpose. But the master is pointing to the simple fact of living. Eat your breakfast, wash your bowl. This moment, this activity, this simple fact of existence, this is it. There's nothing else you need to find, nothing else you need to understand. When everything feels pointless, this is what you do. You eat your breakfast, you wash your bowl, you do what's in front of you to do, not because it has some grand meaning, but because this is the form that life is taking right now. You're here, you're alive, and this is what being alive looks like in this moment. And gradually, if you stay with this, if you don't run back to searching for meaning or sink into despair, you begin to notice something. You begin to notice that the question itself dissolves. What's the point? Stops being a relevant question. It's like asking what the point of a sunset is, or what the purpose of a mountain is, or what a river means. These questions don't make sense because these things don't exist for any reason beyond themselves. They're not means to an end. They're ends in themselves. And so are you. You're not here to accomplish something, or to fulfill some purpose, or to make your life mean something. You're here because you're here. You're alive because you're alive. And that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything. So when everything feels pointless, celebrate. You've seen through the game. You've recognized that all the meanings you were chasing were just stories. And now you're free. Free to live without the burden of having to make it all matter. Free to enjoy the sunset without needing it to teach you a lesson. Free to love without needing it to complete you. Free to work without needing it to define you. Free to simply be alive for no reason at all. This is the great liberation that comes from walking through the doorway of pointlessness. On the other side, you discover that life was never about the point.
There is a strange feeling that follows us through life, even when we seem to have all the things we once wished for. You might notice it on quiet evenings, when everything is finally still, the bills are paid, the kitchen is clean, the lights are soft, and yet something inside you whispers, there must be more. It is not greed, not exactly. It is an ache, an almost sacred restlessness, as if the mind refuses to believe that satisfaction could ever be simple. We are taught from childhood that money is the measure of safety, that to be rich is to be free. But the odd thing is that very few people who are surrounded by abundance ever truly feel free. They are anxious about losing it, suspicious of those who want it, and haunted by the idea that it might one day stop flowing. So even when the river of wealth runs wide, they still feel thirsty. You see, money is not a thing we hold. It is a story we tell. A story about control, about certainty, about being on the right side of fate. But the story keeps changing, and we keep rewriting it. One day, you tell yourself that if you could only earn a little more, you'd finally relax. The next, you have more, and you find new ways to be tense. You upgrade the dream, not because you need to, but because you no longer know how to stop chasing. This is the subtle tragedy of modern life. You can have comfort without peace. You can have wealth without trust. You can have options and still be trapped. And you can spend your entire existence trying to feel what cannot be bought, the quiet assurance that you are already complete. It is curious that the richer a society becomes, the less satisfied its people seem to feel. We accumulate things faster than we can enjoy them. We rush to consume experiences like travelers who are afraid their passports will expire. Even leisure becomes a form of work. We must prove that we are happy, prove that we are fulfilled, prove that our success was not a mistake. And yet, the old problem persists. The feeling of lack. A man who owns a house may still lie awake, worrying about losing it. A woman who finally earns her dream income may suddenly fear that it won't be enough next year. It is never the numbers in the bank that trouble us. It is the belief that we are still incomplete, that someone, somewhere, is ahead. But what does it mean to be rich? Is it to have more than others? Or is it to need less? You can only feel wealth by contrast. If everyone had 1 million, no one would feel rich. If no one had a home, even a single room would feel like a palace. Our sense of abundance is not determined by possession, but by perception, by the game of comparison we unconsciously play every day. The trouble with comparison is that it never ends. There will always be someone who has gone farther, who has achieved sooner, who seems to float through life with less friction than you. But you never see the whole story. You see the highlight reel, the house, the smile, the success, not the anxiety behind it. And so we keep reaching, we keep pushing, we keep moving the goalpost just beyond the horizon, because stopping feels dangerous, almost shameful, as though contentment were a kind of failure. But you cannot chase peace and catch it. You can only allow it. Money is the same. The more you treat it as something to trap, the faster it runs from you. Because money, like life itself, moves in cycles. It flows in, it flows out, it circulates. And when you grip it too tightly, you stop its rhythm. If you truly look, you'll notice that every major financial decision you've ever made was not just about money, it was about what money symbolized. Security, recognition, freedom, love, control. Every purchase, every job, every dream of someday was a coded way of saying, I want to feel safe. But the great paradox is that the moment you tie your safety to something that can fluctuate, you guarantee your insecurity. This is why even wealthy people rarely feel rich. They have built their peace on sand. The market shifts, the company falters, the economy trembles, and the heart trembles with it. But what if you discovered that the sense of richness you're longing for has nothing to do with the balance in your account and everything to do with your relationship to enoughness? Enough is a quiet word. It does not shout like success or sparkle like wealth. It whispers. It says, you may stop now. But the modern mind is deaf to that whisper, because stopping looks too much like losing. We have confused contentment with complacency. Yet the only way to ever feel truly rich is to recognize that you already possess the only wealth that matters, the capacity to be here now without needing the next thing to make it worthwhile. You may have noticed that the richest moments of your life were never the most expensive ones. They were the mornings when the sun touched your window at just the right angle, the laughter that cost nothing, the meal that tasted better because you had someone to share it with. These are not moments of scarcity. They are proof that wealth was never the issue. Attention was. Attention is the new currency of our age. What you give your focus to, you empower. If your attention is constantly orbiting what's missing, then even a fortune will feel fragile. But if your attention settles into what is already here, then even the simplest life will feel abundant. We often think money will finally make us present, that once the bills are gone, the debt erased, the worry silenced, then we will relax. But life has a strange sense of humor. It gives you peace the moment you stop waiting for peace to be purchased. The moment you stop making contentment conditional on external gain, you realize that freedom was never hiding in the bank. It was hiding in your breath. It is a peculiar madness to believe that the value of life depends on the size of one's savings. Yet most people spend their best years trading time, the one thing they can never recover, for figures that exist only as digital ghosts on a screen. The irony is exquisite. We sacrifice the living moment for symbols of potential moments. You do not live in the future that your money promises. You live here, in this pulse, in this breath, and when that breath is over, you cannot spend what you have stored. But the culture around us whispers endlessly, you must prepare, you must accumulate, you must secure yourself. We build whole identities on this premise. The worker becomes his salary, the entrepreneur becomes her valuation, the artist becomes the market's approval, and in the process, we forget the original reason we sought wealth in the first place, to be free to live. Freedom cannot be bought. It is a realization, not a transaction. You may have noticed that those who spend their lives chasing financial freedom rarely find it, because the chase becomes the prison. The moment they reach one target, another appears. They're like sailors who keep moving the island on the map, always rowing toward a shore that never existed. To understand this, you must first see that money is not evil, nor is it sacred. It is neutral, pure energy, pure potential. It becomes poison only when you project your fears and hopes upon it. When you treat it as the medicine for every insecurity, it amplifies the sickness. But when you treat it as a tool, a rhythm, a movement of life itself, it begins to flow naturally again. Most people do not have a money problem, they have a meaning problem. They believe that by accumulating enough, they will one day escape uncertainty. But uncertainty is not an obstacle, it is the very texture of existence. You cannot buy your way out of it. You can only dance with it. Think of the ocean. The waves rise and fall. No one wave lasts forever, yet the ocean remains whole. Money is like that. It rises and falls in the tides of your life. Some seasons bring abundance, others require trust, but both are necessary for the rhythm to stay alive. You cannot have the flow without the ebb. Yet our minds resist this natural movement. We want to lock the river in a vault. We build dams of worry, hoarding, and fear, and then we wonder why we no longer feel the joy of its movement. You might feel it too, that heavy sense that you can never rest, because if you rest, the flow will stop. But it doesn't. It only stops when you stop trusting it. There are people who have very little, yet move through life with quiet confidence. Their peace is not because they are ignorant of difficulty, but because they are intimate with it. They have learned that wealth does not guarantee security any more than poverty guarantees despair. What matters is the relationship not between you and your money, but between you and your own sense of enoughness. You may have enough and still feel poor because you have not learned to feel what you already possess. The mind is trained to seek, not to notice. It treats satisfaction as a sign to move the target farther. That is why the feeling of richness cannot arise from what you own. It arises from how deeply you allow yourself to be owned by this present moment. And that is the great secret. You cannot hold wealth, but wealth can hold you when you stop demanding that it make you feel safe. When you stop trying to make money your savior, you begin to see that life has already been carrying you all along. If you look closely, every moment of your life has been financed by something far deeper than currency, the sheer generosity of existence itself. The sunlight that costs nothing, the breath that renews itself, the people who appear when you least expect it. These are not transactions, they are testaments that abundance has always been the ground beneath your feet. The reason you never feel rich is not that you lack something material, but that you have mistaken the symbol of wealth for the experience of it. And until that illusion is seen through, you could fill every account you own and still wake in the night wondering what's missing. So, pause for a moment. Feel the air moving in and out. Notice that it does not charge rent for entry. Notice that the stars still shine whether your stocks go up or down. Notice that life, in its strange and quiet way, has never stopped providing what is essential. Perhaps that is where real richness begins, in remembering that you were never meant to feel rich by having more, but by realizing that you are already part of something that cannot be owned. At some point, we must ask ourselves what it truly means to have enough. The question sounds simple, almost childish, but it hides the key to our deepest confusion. Enough is not a number, it is a relationship. You cannot measure it with a calculator because it depends on something that cannot be counted, the quality of your awareness. You see, life has never been about accumulation. It has always been about participation. When you are fully participating in the dance of existence, wealth is irrelevant. Whether you are sitting in a palace or beneath a tree, the sense of completeness comes from the same place, the unbroken presence of consciousness itself. But when you forget that, when you identify only with the fragments you can own or display, you feel divided from life, and the divided self can never feel rich. Consider for a moment how the idea of money arose. Once, there was only exchange. A fisherman traded his catch for the farmer's grain. The potter gave a bowl for a loaf of bread. It was a rhythm of giving and receiving, balanced by trust. But as soon as we invented symbolic wealth, the symbol became more important than the exchange. The coin replaced the conversation. The note replaced the handshake. We began to value not the act of giving, but the accumulation of the tokens that represented it. And so humanity found itself in an odd paradox. We created money to make life easier, but then made life revolve around money. We built systems that reward hoarding instead of sharing, growth instead of sufficiency, profit instead of peace. And yet the truth has not changed. You cannot take a single cent with you when you go. The wealth that truly matters is the kind you can still feel when everything else is gone. When you look around, you may notice that people often confuse abundance with excess. Abundance is the experience of fullness. Excess is the refusal to stop. Abundance nourishes, excess intoxicates. One expands your awareness, the other narrows it until you can no longer taste what you consume. A man in a small home can live abundantly if his heart is spacious. A man in a mansion can live in poverty if his soul is cramped by fear. But the problem is not greed, not really. It is confusion. We have mistaken the visible symbols of wealth for the invisible feeling of wholeness they were meant to point toward. And so we keep grasping for more. like a person trying to hold sunlight in their hands. Real richness begins the moment you stop trying to store light and start learning to see it. To feel rich is to recognize that the miracle is not that you possess things, but that things exist at all. That you are here, breathing, conscious, surrounded by textures and sounds and colors that no amount of currency could ever recreate. Look closely at the smallest details, the way the steam curls from your morning tea, the quiet rhythm of your footsteps on the floor, the warmth of someone's voice saying your name. These are not luxuries. These are wealth, but because we are taught to think of life as a ledger, we keep translating these moments into costs and gains. How much did it take? What did I earn? What did I lose? As long as the mind is caught in that arithmetic, it cannot see the truth that the value of a moment is not in what it costs, but in how deeply it is lived. You can spend your entire life chasing security and die without ever feeling safe, or you can discover here and now that safety is not the absence of risk, but the willingness to be present with it. This is why the truly wealthy are not those who have conquered uncertainty, but those who have made peace with it. They understand that life is not meant to be controlled, but experienced. The richest people in spirit are not those who hold everything tightly, but those who have learned to let everything go again and again without losing the capacity to trust. There is a freedom that appears only when you no longer demand that the world guarantee you anything. It is the freedom of being able to breathe without bargaining. The freedom of knowing that your worth does not rise and fall with the market or with the approval of others. When you realize this, something subtle shifts. The pursuit of wealth turns inward. You begin to invest, not in possessions, but in perception. You become interested in the quality of your attention, how present you are when you speak, how open you are when you listen, how generous you are when you act. That is the real portfolio of the spirit. You see, all along, life has been offering you dividends of awareness. Every challenge, every failure, every success, all of it has been teaching you how to wake up. But you cannot cash those lessons in a bank. Their value is in their transformation. And so the question is not how to make more, but how to mean more. How to let your actions carry the weight of awareness. How to allow even the simplest gesture, a smile, a meal, a moment of silence, to become a declaration of gratitude for the wealth that is already surrounding you. People often ask, but what about ambition? Should I not strive? Of course you should strive, but know what you are striving for. There is nothing wrong with earning money, creating art, or building a company. What matters is whether your work is an expression of love or a performance of fear. When it comes from love, it expands you. When it comes from fear, it drains you. A man who works from love is not working for security. He is working because he is alive. He moves with the current of life instead of against it. He understands that what he creates is not for possession, but participation. The reward is not the result, but the doing. And when you truly work in that spirit, money ceases to be an obsession and becomes a natural byproduct of energy well spent. It flows to you not as proof of worth, but as a reflection of alignment. The difficulty, of course, is that we are surrounded by noise, a culture built on convincing us that we are always one purchase away from happiness. Every advertisement whispers the same sermon. You are not enough, but we can sell you the missing piece. And because we are tired, uncertain, and hungry for relief, we believe it. We keep feeding a hunger that cannot be satisfied, because it is not physical, it is spiritual. To be spiritually hungry is not wrong. It is the first step toward awakening. But to confuse spiritual hunger with material lack is to wander forever. The moment you understand that what you crave is not more, but meaning, everything changes. You stop trying to fill the silence with noise or the stillness with motion. You begin to see that the discomfort of not enough is simply the invitation to meet yourself more deeply. It is not a curse, but a doorway. The moment you stop running from it, it opens. To feel rich, then, is to return to that inner stillness and find that you have never truly been poor. That the wealth you sought outside was always an echo of the abundance within. You realize that your entire life has been funded by something infinite, the same mystery that animates the trees, the rivers, the stars. It is a strange discovery to make because it dissolves the game entirely. You can still earn, still build, still plan for the future, but now you do it with lightness. You are no longer trying to prove your worth, you are simply expressing it. The anxiety of comparison fades, the compulsion to outdo disappears. What remains is participation, a pure willingness to live. And when you live like that, money becomes what it was meant to be, a servant, not a master. It moves through you as easily as breath, supporting what needs to unfold, then leaving when it is time. You trust that it will return when it is needed, because you are no longer clinging to its form. You are rooted in the deeper flow beneath it, the pulse of life itself. Imagine for a moment that you were suddenly invisible to society. No one could see your possessions, your titles, or your success. What would remain of you then? That remainder, the essence that cannot be measured or marketed, that is your true wealth. Everything else is temporary. There will come a day when your last transaction is complete, your last ambition satisfied, your last coin spent. And in that moment, all that will matter is whether you have learned how to be rich in presence, whether you can meet the final silence with gratitude instead of fear. If you have lived in constant hunger for more, death will feel like theft. But if you have lived in awareness of enough, death will feel like completion. The world will always offer you reasons to worry. The market will fall. Prices will rise. The future will tremble. But the one thing that cannot be shaken is the realization that wealth was never outside you. It was the consciousness through which you perceived the world. It was the gratitude that transformed necessity into blessing, repetition into ritual, ordinary life into sacredness. You are not poor because you lack things. You are poor only when you forget how to see. So learn to see again. See the way the morning light filters through the curtain. See the faces of those you love. See the fleeting moments that slip between your plans. They are all pieces of gold scattered freely across the day. You don't have to own them, you only have to notice them. One day, you will look back and realize that the moments you thought were small were the richest of all. That the peace you chased through decades of work was already waiting for you, quietly, in the pause between breaths. To feel rich is not to escape life's uncertainty, but to bow to it. To say yes to each wave as it comes, and yes again when it goes. To know that what is yours will always find its way to you, because you are already part of the same current that carries everything else. And when that realization settles in your bones, you no longer ask, "Do I have enough?" You simply whisper, "I am enough." That is where the chase ends. That is where wealth begins.
You see, living merely to await a brilliant tomorrow is the most refined way to steal one's own life. Imagine you're walking up an endless staircase. In Latin, gradus means step, and we call the years of schooling grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, then graduation, gradus, gradus, gradus. You climb and climb as if each step were a promise of something greater. Finally, when you stand at the very top, perhaps as the chairman of a massive corporation, you suddenly feel a strange emptiness. You've conquered everything, but now what? There are no more steps to climb, and since you were never taught how to pause, to breathe, to feel this moment, you become lost in your own victory. Our education system, with all its seriousness and structure, never guides you on how to exist right in the breath of the present. It only trains you to postpone joy, to push everything into a vague future. Then one day, When you're exhausted from all those graders, an insurance agent knocks on the door and whispers, "I have the perfect thing for you, a retirement plan. Just be patient until you're 65, when you leave the work grind, and you'll truly live, truly enjoy." Enjoy what? Exactly. With prostate pains, hormonal changes, dentures, and all the annoyances of old age. That's an empty promise, a way to extend the deferral of life. The art of living in the eternal moment, what people call now, is never taught in classrooms. Why? Because it's seen as irresponsible, lazy, lacking ambition. But listen, enjoying life isn't a luxury. It's the most basic human duty. If you don't learn how to do it, you'll become a burden to yourself and the world around you. You'll grow aggressive, seek to seize, manipulate others, turn into a power-mad tyrant, all because you haven't grasped the simple, cheap secret of being fully present in this second. In truth, sustaining a human life doesn't require that much energy. Think about it. How much food is enough? What do you wear to cover and warm yourself? How much space do you need to dwell? It all boils down to needs so basic they're almost simplistic. And that simplicity opens the door to savoring the most refined things. Watching a raindrop slide down the window pane, feeling how it curves, how light refracts, how it merges with the world outside. That's a free performance, a masterpiece of the universe. But if you tell someone you're entranced by it, they'll shake their head. Are you crazy? Why not do something more important? More important here means what? It means causing disruption, intervening, progressing. We're indoctrinated with the idea that a person's value lies in changing the world, in pushing everything forward. We confuse natural growth, like trees growing, with progress as defined by humans. Without a grand project, without bustling activity, without future goals, you're labeled lazy, useless. But those who don't chase the future say, "You're the crazy ones. You work to accumulate for a tomorrow that never comes, while we live fully today." Look at how a traditional Chinese person works. He labors just enough to have money, then stops, goes to a tea house, gambles a bit, smokes a pipe, or simply wanders admiring the scenery. We call that irresponsible, not maintaining the world properly. But perhaps that way of living is the true maintenance. Perhaps we, with our Protestant work ethic of ceaseless labor, with the belief that everything must be controlled, must progress, are the ones destroying the planet. We eradicate diseases, extend lifespans, but end up creating nuclear bombs to wipe it all out. That's the logical outcome of living for the future, promising forever, and when there's nothing left to promise, only destruction remains. Peoples untouched by the whirlpool of politics, Native American tribes, indigenous Mexicans, Africans, don't understand us, and we don't understand them, because they have no desire for what we call an ideal society. A few were convinced, like in Japan. They plunged into Western-style industrialization, and now cities like Nara, Osaka, Kobe are choked in smog, Tokyo a chaotic nightmare. They're reaping the consequences of chasing the illusion of the future. In the Hindu worldview, time is a cycle called yuga, starting from a golden age, then gradually declining, everything just unraveling over the ages. That's a reminder, escape the wheel of time, escape that rat race. This very idea underlies the political philosophy of redirection that I propose. Lead Western people out of history, out of the belief that we're in a process leading to something better forever. In reality, that process only leads to ever greater destruction. Live a timeless way of life, indefinite, far more appealing than a life devoted to time. Technology isn't the enemy. It brings the power to completely eliminate poverty. But if we view technology through the lens of history, as part of unending progress, it will fail. The distribution problem of wealth from technology isn't material, it's psychological. People are hypnotized by money, seeing it as having intrinsic value instead of just a symbol. Imagine a cosmic joke. Money, which we worship like a god, is really just numbers dancing in ledgers. Ramakrishna once said gold is one of humanity's great calamities, not because the metal shines, but because we mistake the symbol for reality. There's a funny story I like to retell. Long ago, banks around the world got tired of shipping physical gold across oceans, so they set up a central island in the Pacific. All the gold was gathered there, in a massive vault. For exchanges, they'd just push carts of gold down a short street between branches. Everything ran smoothly for a decade. Then one day, the bank owners brought their wives and kids to visit the island. Threw a grand party. They checked the books. Perfect. Finally, the kids clamored, "Dad, show us the gold." The vault managers started stammering, sweating. It's a bit difficult. It needs some preparation." The bank owner barked, "Nonsense. Show the kids the gold now." Finally, the truth came out. 7 years earlier, a submarine earthquake had swallowed the entire vault. But don't worry, they still recorded exactly how much gold each side owned in the books. So the gold was gone, but the value remained. On paper, we laugh uproariously, but that's exactly how the world works today. Money isn't gold, isn't resources, isn't real wealth, just promises, signs, collective magic. The US dollar prints. The United States government promises to pay $1. Pay with what? Another piece of paper. Money is debt, credit, packaged faith. The problem isn't lack of food, housing, clothing, technology produces in surplus. The problem is we're hypnotized by numbers on bank screens. We burn food in America while children starve in India, not because of shortage, but because the books don't balance. That's a refined form of madness. We can feed the whole planet, but let millions starve just for a symbol. The solution sounds equally mad. Reverse taxation. Instead of collecting from people, issue credit, but credit tied to actual total output, not phantom gold or empty promises. Then everyone can exchange what they create without monetary barriers blocking them. This isn't an economic issue. It's psychological. We're trapped in the illusion called Maya in Indian philosophy, the veil over reality. The future is part of that veil. We live as if tomorrow is when life really begins. Imagine you're a donkey with a fishing pole around your neck, a carrot dangling at the end right in front of your nose. You walk and walk, the carrot always there, always in reach, but never touched. That's the perfect image of modern man. We chase the future, chase retirement, chase when I'm rich then, when I retire then, when the kids are grown then, and when you finally bite the carrot, achieve the goal, you realize it's just a plastic fake, or worse, it's long withered. Classical Eastern people don't fall into this trap. They work just enough to live, then stop. They don't see work as life's purpose, but as a means. A Japanese blacksmith might spend the morning forging a blade, then the afternoon sitting watching cherry blossoms fall. We call that laziness. They call it living. When you're not obsessed with the future, you don't need infinite accumulation. You don't need a big house, fancy car, overflowing closet, because you don't use them to fill an inner void. That void can only be filled by presence, hearing leaves rustle, feeling the warmth of a teacup in your hand, smelling earth after rain. But our society is built on fear of scarcity. We're taught that if we don't accumulate, don't prepare, don't progress, we'll fall into misery. So we run forever, like hamsters on a wheel. And the wheel spins so fast we don't realize we're standing still. Technology advances, the wheel spins faster. We have washing machines, dishwashers, cars, planes, all to save time. Save time for what? To work more, earn more, buy more time savers. The perfect circle of meaninglessness. Meanwhile, a farmer in Bali might spend the day sitting under a coconut tree, watching waves crash. He has no insurance, no retirement fund, no 5-year plan. But he has what we've lost, peace in this moment. He doesn't wait for tomorrow to live, because he knows tomorrow is just a notion. Today is all he has, and today is enough. We need a revolution not in politics, not in economics, but in perception. Redirect people away from history, away from the story that we're progressing toward a future paradise. History is a linear tale, from primitive to civilized, from poverty to prosperity, from war to peace. But reality isn't linear. Reality is cyclical. Birth, dwelling, change, extinction. Every empire collapses. Every technology obsolesces. Every future promise vanishes. Only this moment is real. Technology can be a tool for liberation, if used right. Imagine, machines do all heavy work, automate food production, energy, housing. People don't need to work 8 hours a day. We could work 2 hours, or nothing at all, and still have enough. But for that to happen, We must abandon the illusion of money as a measure of value. We must abandon the belief that hard work is moral. We must learn to live without future goals. Now let's step together into an imaginary garden. Not a manicured Versailles type, but a wild garden where grass grows haphazardly, flowers bloom by season, and no one bothers to prune. Here, time isn't the enemy, it's a companion. A butterfly lands on a petal. You stop to watch, not to record or photograph, but just because it's happening. That's timeless living. No schedule, no destination, only presence. But this garden isn't far away. It's right in the breath you're taking, in the bird song outside the window, in the feel of your hand on the wooden table. Our society fears that garden. We're taught that without plans, goals, a mission, life is meaningless. Try telling your boss you want a day off to watch clouds drift. He'll think you've lost your mind. Try telling friends you don't need a promotion, a bigger house. They'll worry about your future. We're imprisoned in an invisible jail with bars made of promises. Just try a little harder and you'll be happy. But that little harder lasts a lifetime and happiness dangles out of reach. Look at how children play. A 3-year-old can spend hours stacking Lego, not to build the world's tallest tower, but for the joy of each brick clicking. It doesn't think about growing up to be an architect. It has no concept of wasted time. Then we adults step in and teach. Stop playing. Go study so you can succeed later. We strip away their wild garden, replace it with an industrial field, rows upon rows, straight, efficient, but soulless. We adults once had that garden too, but lost it. We replace natural joy with conditional joy. I'll be happy when I have a degree, when I have a partner, when I have a house, when I have kids, when I retire. Each time we achieve, we set a new condition. That's how the ego, hypnotized by time, operates. In Taoist philosophy, Lao Tzu said, "The one who knows enough is rich." Not rich from owning much, but rich from needing nothing more. The Taoist elder's garden is just a thatched hut, a pine tree, a stream. But he sits there, smiling at drifting clouds, feeling he owns the universe. Technology, used rightly, can return the garden to us. Imagine a world where robots plant rice, machines weave cloth, solar power provides free electricity. People don't work to live. They work if they want, or do nothing. A painter paints because colors move him. A musician plays because sounds make him alive. No one asks, how much does your art contribute to GDP? No one measures life's value in work hours. That's not far-fetched utopia. It's possible today if we dare abandon the illusion of earning a living. But to abandon, we must face the greatest fear, that if we don't run, we'll fall into the abyss, that if we don't accumulate, we'll starve, that if we have no goals, we'll be empty. These fears are nurtured from childhood. Study hard for a good job later, save so you don't suffer later, work hard to rest later, all based on the premise that the present isn't enough, that only the future is worthwhile. But what is the future? It's a notion, a ghost. When you reach that future, it's become the present, and you need a new future. In Zen, there's a famous koan. Before enlightenment, I chopped wood, carried water. After enlightenment, I chopped wood, carried water. Nothing changes outside, but everything changes inside. Work is no longer a means to something. It is itself. Chopping wood is chopping wood. Carrying water is carrying water. Watching rain is watching rain. No, so that later. That's timeless living. Every action self-perfect, needing no reason beyond itself. Try a small experiment. For 10 minutes, do nothing. Just sit, breathe, look. No phone, no music, no thinking about to-do lists. At first you'll fidget. The brain will scream, wasting time, do something useful. But if you persist, a magical moment comes, stillness. You realize that without doing, you still exist, still complete. Those 10 minutes aren't lost. They're 10 minutes you truly lived. Our society doesn't teach this experiment. Schools teach math, literature, science, all aimed at later. No one teaches, today, sit still and feel your heartbeat. No one teaches, eat a bite of rice and really taste it. We're trained into efficient machines, but not into humans. The result? We can build rockets to Mars, but can't sit still for a minute without guilt. A friend once told me about his grandfather. a central Vietnamese farmer who only knew plowing fields, planting rice his whole life. No TV, no radio, no concept of retirement. Every evening he sat on the porch, smoked a water pipe, watched the moon, asked, "Do you have any dreams?" He laughed. "What are dreams? I have rice to eat, a place to sleep, the moon to watch. Enough." We laugh at his spiritual poverty. But perhaps we're the poor ones because we don't know enough. Technology can help us return to the garden, but only if we change our view. Instead of using machines to produce more, use them to need less. Instead of building factories for jobs, build parks for people to play. Instead of inventing apps to save time, invent ways for people to enjoy time. That's the real revolution. Not changing the outer world, but the inner. Imagine a morning without an alarm. No bell, no meetings, no urgent messages. You open your eyes, sunlight filters through leaves, and instead of jumping up, you lie there, listening to your own breath. That's not laziness. It's the first time in years you've allowed yourself to be here. Not so that later, not because I must earn a living, just be here. That moment isn't in a 5-year plan, not rated by KPIs, not needing social media posts. It's yours, and only yours. Now, scale that moment to a whole society. A society that no longer uses clocks to measure human value. A society where schools teach kids to watch clouds instead of competing for grades. A society where occupation isn't a business card, but how you choose to express joy. A baker bakes because he loves the smell of rising dough. A storyteller tells because she loves kids' eyes lighting up. No one asks, "What's your salary?" But, "Does it make you come alive?" Sounds fanciful? Actually, we have all the tools to make it real today. Automated agriculture can feed 8 billion with land smaller than a province. Solar, wind, geothermal can provide unlimited power without bills. 3D printers can create homes, clothes, tools in hours. The problem isn't scarcity, but distribution. And distribution is stuck in the money maze. Money is no longer a medium of exchange. It's become the end. We work for money, use money to buy time, then work to make up lost time. The perfect circle of madness. Break the circle with a simple idea. Universal credit tied to real output. Everyone gets enough credit to live comfortably. Not to be rich, but to be free. This credit doesn't accumulate. No interest, no debt. It's created corresponding to actual goods and services society produces. Want bread? Yes. Want a house? Yes. Want to learn painting? Yes. No one has to earn it by selling 8 hours of life daily. Work becomes choice, not obligation. An engineer might spend 3 months on clean energy research, then 6 months fishing. A teacher might teach in winter, wander admiring flowers in summer. No one gets fired for inefficiency. Efficiency is measured by joy, not profit. But for this to happen, we must abandon 2 great illusions. 1, the future is where we'll live. 2, money is the measure of value. The first illusion we've discussed much. The future is the carrot on the stick. When you get there, it's past, and you need a new carrot. The second is subtler. We believe a piece of paper, a screen number, has power to decide who eats, who sleeps, who lives. But money is just collective belief. If the world agrees a seashell is money, it is. If the world agrees universal credit is fair, it will be. The problem isn't technical. It's that we haven't dared to believe. Try a thought experiment. Suppose tomorrow all money vanishes. No dollars, euros, yen. Only goods. Rice, cloth, houses, cars. What do? You barter. I give you a sack of rice. You give me a meter of cloth. I fix your roof. You teach my kid math. We'd quickly realize value lies in actions, not symbols. Money is just simplifying exchange at scale. But when scale distorts reality, when someone starves beside a granary because no money, it's no longer a tool, but chains. Technology can replace those chains with direct exchange. Blockchain, AI, IoT sensors can track real output and distribute credit instantly. No central banks, no governments taxing. Everyone has a digital wallet tied to basic needs. Want more? Create value, not by working hard, but by doing what you love. A good song, a joke, a beautiful garden, all value. AI calculates and distributes. No one richer from hoarding, no one poorer from laziness. Wealth becomes ability to enjoy, not to own. In that world, retirement ceases to exist, because no one works waiting to retire. Kids don't learn for jobs, but to understand the world. Elders aren't shoved into nursing homes, but invited to tell stories under trees. Artists don't starve because market doesn't need. Scientists don't beg grants to prove economic benefit. Everyone does because that's how they breathe. And when we no longer run, we'll discover a secret. Time isn't a resource, but space to live. Each moment is a small universe. Watching dew on a leaf isn't entertainment. It's meditation. Hearing music isn't pastime. It's communion with the infinite. Eating a meal isn't fueling. It's a ritual thanking earth and sky. When you live like that, you don't need rest because you've never worked in the old sense. You just are. Finally, return to the wild garden. The butterfly still lands on the flower. Clouds still drift. You sit there, no reason, no purpose. And in that moment, you realize this isn't a break between tasks. This is humanity's real work, presence. All the gradius, all the promises, all the carrots.
You see, when we speak of awakening, we often imagine that something extraordinary must happen to us, a blinding revelation, a sudden insight that transforms the ordinary world into some kind of mystical vision. But awakening is not something you acquire, not something you can chase or earn. It is, in fact, the recognition that there was never anything to gain. The strange paradox is that when you stop trying to become awakened, you realize you already are. But, of course, saying that to a person still caught in the game of seeking sounds like nonsense. They want to know how, what to do, what step to take, and yet every step you take to find it only takes you further away, because you are moving in the wrong direction toward effort, toward the future, toward the illusion that there is somewhere to get to. Most of our lives are organized around that illusion. From the moment we begin to think of ourselves as someone, we are told that we must improve, advance, refine, and control. We measure our value by what we can obtain: more money, more knowledge, more love, more approval. Even our spiritual pursuits are infected by this disease of acquisition. We want enlightenment, like we want a new car or a diploma. We imagine that there's a ladder reaching to heaven, and all we need to do is climb faster than the rest. Yet every rung of that ladder is made of smoke, and the higher we go, the less real it all becomes. What awakening reveals is that there is no ladder, no top, no bottom, only the ever-present ground beneath your feet. When one truly awakens, one does not gain new powers or visions. One gains nothing, but in that nothing, everything changes. It is like waking from a dream in which you believed you were starving, and suddenly realizing that the hunger was only part of the dream. The food you were chasing was never real, yet you, the dreamer, remain. The great secret is not that you become something different, but that you cease to need to become anything at all. What you gain is not more content in your life, but the quiet recognition of what was always there. Now, of course, our minds don't like that kind of simplicity. We think, surely it can't be that easy. We are addicted to struggle. We believe meaning comes from difficulty, that peace must be earned by effort, that wisdom must be bought with suffering. So when someone tells us that the truth is already present, that we are already free, we think it must be a trick. And so we continue searching, reading books, attending retreats, analyzing our thoughts, all the while overlooking the simple fact that the search itself is the barrier. To seek truth is to affirm its absence, just as to chase happiness is to admit you are unhappy. Awakening is the end of that chase. Imagine, for a moment, a man standing in the middle of a clear pond, frantically scooping at the water with his hands in an attempt to find what he already stands upon. He disturbs the reflection, splashing about, growing more and more frustrated. And then, suddenly, exhausted, he stops. The water settles. the reflection returns. He sees the sky mirrored perfectly beneath him. That moment of stillness, that surrender, is awakening. Not a reward for effort, but the result of exhaustion, the exhaustion of the self that seeks. So, what do you gain when you awaken? You gain the loss of what was never real. You lose the burden of trying to be someone. You gain the simplicity of being no one in particular. You lose the anxiety of time, the endless pushing toward some imagined tomorrow, and you gain the immediacy of this moment. It's not that life suddenly becomes perfect. You still get hungry, tired, lonely. You still laugh, cry, and make mistakes. But the difference is that it all happens within a vast sense of okayness. The storm still rages, but you are no longer in the storm. You are the sky that contains it. The tragedy of modern life is that we are taught to identify with the storm. We say, I am sad, I am angry, I am lost, but these are only passing clouds. You are not your thoughts any more than the ocean is its waves. When one awakens, one doesn't destroy the waves, one simply stops mistaking them for the sea. You realize that behind every rise and fall, there is a quiet stillness that never changes. And from that stillness, life moves effortlessly. You might ask, well then, if I am already this awareness, why don't I feel it? The answer is simple. You are looking for it as though it were an object. You imagine awareness as something that can be experienced, when in fact, it is the very condition for experience itself. You cannot see your own eyes without a mirror, and you cannot perceive awareness as though it were apart from you. So, in our endless attempts to observe, analyze, and define ourselves, we create more mirrors, more reflections, more distortion. But the truth was never hiding. It was simply overlooked because it was too close. That's why, when people awaken, they often laugh. Not because they've discovered something new, but because they realize how absurdly simple it has always been. It's as if you've been tearing the house apart looking for your glasses, only to find them perched on your nose. The laughter is the sound of the mind collapsing into humility. It realizes it can't grasp what it is trying to hold, because it itself is the thing being held. And so, awakening is not an achievement. It is not the result of discipline or purity or perfection. It is the relaxation of the very effort to reach it. In that relaxation, you discover what was always here, the unshakable presence of being itself. And once that realization dawns, you cannot lose it, because it was never gained. You cannot unsee what has been seen. You cannot unknow the truth that you are the very thing you were seeking. The only thing you can lose is the illusion that you were ever separate from it. Of course, awakening doesn't make you superhuman. You don't float about in a permanent state of bliss. Rather, you become profoundly ordinary. You can drink tea, take a walk, wash the dishes, and yet everything shimmers with a quiet luminosity. The sound of water, the feeling of sunlight, the laughter of a friend, all are sacred, not because they belong to some higher world, but because you finally see them as they are. You stop dividing life into sacred and profane, spiritual and mundane. You realize it was all one dance, one motion, one eternal now. And this is what awakened people gain: not detachment from life, but intimacy with it. They no longer hold themselves apart, judging, comparing, calculating. They are immersed, but not entangled. They act, but without the tension of control. They love, but without possession. They experience pain, but without resistance. The gain is a kind of effortless participation. It is the freedom to be fully human, without pretending to be divine, and yet knowing that the divine was never anywhere else. In our culture, we confuse awakening with escape. We think it means to transcend the human condition, to rise above suffering, to be beyond error. But true awakening is not escape, it is inclusion. It is saying yes to everything, even the parts you once rejected. It is realizing that the darkness, the confusion, the doubt are not mistakes to fix, but aspects of the whole to embrace. You see, the moment you stop trying to edit existence, you discover its perfection. You realize that everything you tried to push away was, in its own way, necessary for the dance to continue. This realization brings a deep compassion, for when you no longer judge yourself for being flawed, you no longer judge others for being asleep. You see them as you once were, caught in the same beautiful confusion, dreaming the same dream of control and separation. And so, instead of trying to wake them up, you simply love them. You let them be, because you understand that even their struggle is part of awakening. After all, you cannot wake from a dream you've never had. As you awaken, what you gain is not certainty, but trust. The old craving for answers dissolves, replaced by a quiet confidence that you don't need them. You no longer demand that the universe explain itself. You live as the question, open, alive, curious. You no longer seek security in belief or identity. You rest in the unknown and find that it holds you. What you gain is not knowledge, but wisdom, the kind that doesn't cling to conclusions. And what's most surprising is how utterly simple life becomes. You see, simplicity is not the absence of complexity, but the absence of conflict. When the self stops arguing with reality, everything falls into harmony. You no longer feel divided between what is and what should be. You stop rehearsing your life and begin to live it. You stop analyzing your feelings and begin to feel them. You stop searching for love and discover you are its source. This simplicity cannot be taught through philosophy. It has to be seen. It's like a mirror that reflects everything but holds on to nothing. The awakened person moves through life like that, reflecting, responding, dancing, yet untouched by the passing images. They have not withdrawn from life. They are more alive than ever, because they no longer resist it. So the great gain of awakening is the loss of struggle. The gain is the peace that comes when you stop trying to fix the world and instead allow it to unfold. The gain is the return to innocence, the unlearned trust of a child who plays without purpose, loves without calculation, and cries without shame. To awaken is to rediscover that innocence in the heart of wisdom, to see with clear eyes and still say yes to it all. And so, my friends, what you gain when you awaken is not something you can hold, not something you can show or prove. You gain a way of being, a way of seeing that transforms every ordinary act into a miracle. You gain the silence between thoughts, the stillness beneath movement, the presence within absence. You gain yourself not as an object, but as the ungraspable awareness that has always been here, waiting for you to stop searching long enough to notice. And when you begin to see this clearly, something very gentle starts to happen to your relationship with life. You stop treating it as a problem to solve, and you start listening to it like you might listen to music. You notice that each moment has its own melody, its own texture, and that you are not standing apart from it. You are the very rhythm itself, moving and changing, rising and falling, breathing in and out. To live awakened is to live musically, not mechanically. It's to sense that everything that happens, no matter how apparently chaotic, fits perfectly into the larger harmony. The mind, of course, will protest. It wants to hold on, to define, to plan. It will say, yes, but what about tomorrow? What about my responsibilities, my dreams, my losses? And the answer, you see, is not to reject those concerns, but to notice that they too are part of the music. The melody includes the dissonance, the unresolved chords, the tension that makes the release so beautiful. Without them, the song would be flat and lifeless. The awakened person does not demand that life always sounds sweet. They understand that even the sour notes belong to the composition. This changes how you relate to suffering. You begin to see that pain, fear, confusion, they are not punishments, nor signs that you've done something wrong. They are movements in the great symphony of existence. And when you stop resisting them, they transform. You see the difference between pain and the resistance to pain. Pain simply arises and passes. Resistance lingers, echoing, amplifying, creating stories. The more you fight it, the deeper it digs in. The moment you allow it, the moment you say yes to even this, it begins to dissolve. Awareness itself is the cure. Now, there is something profoundly tender about that discovery, because for the first time, you stop running away from yourself. You no longer divide your inner world into good and bad, acceptable and shameful. You see that the parts you once rejected were never enemies at all. They were lost children waiting to be seen. And so, you stop trying to purify yourself into some ideal version of a spiritual being, and you begin to love the human one instead. You begin to understand that the divine expresses itself precisely through imperfection. The crack in the bowl is what allows the light to shine through. And as you grow into that understanding, something unexpected emerges humor. You begin to laugh at the whole cosmic joke. You laugh at how serious you once were, how desperately you tried to be enlightened, how tightly you clung to the very ideas that kept you trapped. You laugh because you see the absurdity of trying to control what was never yours to control. You laugh, and in that laughter, the walls collapse. The divine play, the Leela, as they call it in Sanskrit, becomes obvious. The world is not a machine grinding toward an end. It's a dance of energy, endlessly creating and dissolving itself, and you are both the dancer and the dance. When you awaken to that, the quality of your relationships also changes. You no longer approach others as instruments to your happiness. You see them as reflections of yourself, not metaphorically, but literally. You realize that there is only one awareness appearing as many points of view. So when you meet another person, you are meeting a different expression of the same being. This recognition gives rise to an effortless compassion. You no longer need to forgive because there is nothing left to accuse. You no longer need to prove because there is nothing to defend. You relate from a space of quiet understanding, free of demand. And yet, this doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent. You still speak truth, you still act, you still set boundaries when necessary, but you do it without hatred, without the need to conquer or justify. Your actions arise like waves from the ocean, spontaneous, appropriate, alive. You respond instead of reacting. You participate instead of controlling. And in that way, every interaction becomes sacred, because it is no longer about getting something. It's about recognizing what's already shared. Many people imagine that awakening makes life easier, but in truth, it simply makes it real. You still face loss, illness, conflict, disappointment. The difference is that you no longer interpret these as personal failures. You see them as part of the unfolding. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And begin to ask, what is this showing me? The awakened person doesn't avoid storms. They learn to dance in the rain, because the rain is also part of the song. In this openness, your sense of time begins to shift. You notice that the past and the future are no longer as heavy as they once were. They appear like faint ripples across the vast stillness of now. You realize that what you called past is just memory arising in the present, and what you call future is imagination appearing here too. Everything is happening now, and this now has no edge. It is infinite, boundless, ungraspable. You stop trying to live in the moment, because you see there is nothing outside of it. The idea of living in the present becomes redundant. You are the present. When that realization dawns, anxiety begins to fade. Because anxiety always depends on time. It depends on imagining a future you must prepare for or a past you must fix. Without that timeline, fear loses its foundation. You find a quiet confidence that whatever arises will be met when it comes. You no longer need to prepare for life because you are life. And this brings with it a kind of softness, a grace. You stop pushing so hard. You stop running so fast. You start to trust the natural intelligence that beats your heart, that breathes your lungs, that turns night into day without your permission. This trust is what many traditions call faith. But it's not faith in a concept or a distant deity. It's faith in the living reality of existence itself. You begin to notice how everything works together in mysterious balance, the way pain deepens compassion, the way endings give rise to beginnings, the way loss opens space for renewal. You see that you don't need to understand it all. You can rest in the mystery, because the mystery is not against you, it is you. This resting brings about a deep stillness, even in motion. You can be busy yet peaceful, involved yet free. You no longer need to withdraw to find silence. The silence is within you wherever you go. It's the silence between the notes, the space that allows the music to be heard. The awakened person doesn't reject the world, they listen to it differently. They hear the divine rhythm in traffic noise, in children's laughter, in their own heartbeat. Everything becomes a kind of meditation, not because they are trying to be mindful, but because they can no longer help it. And gradually, a shift occurs in your motivation. You stop living to prove yourself, to accumulate, to win. You live because living itself is the play of existence. You work, you rest, you create, not out of fear or ambition, but out of the sheer joy of participation. You become like an artist painting without needing to finish the picture, knowing that the act of painting is the beauty itself. You stop striving for purpose, because you see that life doesn't have one in the way you imagined. Life is not a journey toward meaning, it is the meaning. And the more you try to impose meaning on it, the more it slips away. So what you gain when you awaken is the freedom to live without needing a reason. You are no longer driven by the anxious question of what am I supposed to do. You do what feels alive, and that aliveness becomes your compass. You realize that meaning is not found, it is expressed. Every moment you live authentically, every breath you take in awareness, is meaning itself unfolding. The awakened life is not a life of answers, but of pure response, spontaneous, creative, full of wonder. And in this simplicity, something miraculous happens. You begin to fall in love with everything. Not a sentimental love, not an emotional clinging, but a deep appreciation for the astonishing fact that anything exists at all. You walk through the world as if seeing it for the first time. The light on water, the sound of footsteps, the scent of rain, each becomes a portal to the infinite. You realize that existence doesn't need improvement. It needs only to be seen. To awaken is to see. But this seeing is not separate from doing. It's not the lazy detachment of someone who says it's all an illusion. It's the vivid engagement of someone who says it's all alive. You live fully because you no longer fear loss. You give fully because you no longer fear lack. You die to each moment, gladly, because you know you will rise in the next. That is what makes the awakened life so radiant. It's not an escape from death, but a dance with it. And this brings us to one of the greatest paradoxes. The awakened person gains the ability to lose completely. They are not afraid of endings because they know there are none. Every ending is just the beginning of another form. Just as a wave falls back into the sea only to rise again, you see that what you truly are cannot be diminished. What you gain when you awaken is the understanding that loss itself is part of wholeness, that even disappearance is a kind of presence. And so you stop hoarding moments. You stop clinging to experiences, people, even memories. You learn the art of letting things pass through you. You become transparent, like glass, allowing light to move freely. You are no longer heavy with the weight of what was or what could be. You are light, fluid, open. You are, in every sense, free. And it is in that freedom that the deepest joy emerges, not the fleeting happiness that depends on conditions, but the uncaused joy that arises simply because you are. It is not a joy that needs to shout. It hums quietly beneath all things. You feel it when you breathe, when you watch a bird take flight, when you smile for no reason. It is the joy of being itself, which cannot be taken, cannot be taught, cannot be lost. That, my friends, is the gain that never fades, the gain that was never earned, the gain that was always yours. When you begin to live from this space, you find that the whole experience of being human becomes lighter. Not easier in the sense of less demanding, but lighter in spirit. You can carry the same burdens as before, but they no longer weigh upon you in the same way. The heaviness was never in the burden itself. It was in the illusion that you were carrying it alone. The moment you see that you are the life that carries itself, the burden dissolves. Effort still exists, but the strain disappears. It is like dancing. The steps may be complex, but when you let the rhythm guide you, it no longer feels like work. Now you might say, but what about my responsibilities? What about the real challenges of life? And of course they remain. But the difference is that you meet them from a different place. You respond not from fear or obligation, but from clarity. When the mind is no longer clouded by anxiety and control, wisdom arises naturally. You see what needs to be done, and you do it without the constant commentary of self-judgment. Life moves through you with its own intelligence. You become, as it were, an instrument that plays itself. This is why the awakened person seems calm even amidst chaos. It's not that they are numb or detached. On the contrary, they feel everything more vividly than ever before. But because they no longer identify with every passing thought or emotion, they are not drowned by them. Emotions come and go like weather over the landscape, but the sky itself remains untroubled. You become that sky, and once you see yourself as the sky, you stop trying to control the clouds. You let them drift, you let them rain, you let them shine, and everything finds its place. You might notice, too, that your sense of identity begins to loosen. You no longer cling so tightly to the story of who you think you are. You stop being so certain about what defines you, because you realize that identity is not fixed. It's a process, a dance of appearances. One moment you are a teacher, another a friend, another a stranger passing by. And all these roles, though temporary, are expressions of the same consciousness. You don't have to pick one and make it permanent. You can be all of them and none of them at once. That is true freedom. It's a curious thing, but when you stop taking yourself so seriously, the universe begins to reveal its sense of humor. You start to see how the grand drama of human existence is, in a way, a play. Each of us plays our part, the hero, the fool, the lover, the skeptic, and the beauty of it is that the roles keep changing. The trouble begins when we forget it's a play. When we start believing we are the mask, we suffer. But the moment you remember, you can laugh again. You can enjoy the performance, even when it's tragic, because you know the essence behind it is untouchable. This is what many spiritual traditions mean when they talk about detachment. It's not coldness or indifference. It's the warmth of knowing that you are safe, even when things appear to fall apart. You can let the waves crash because you know you are the ocean. You can let the story twist and turn because you know you are the storyteller. And once you understand that, fear loses its grip entirely. For how can the ocean be afraid of the wave? How can the storyteller be afraid of the plot? From that space, love takes on a new dimension. It's no longer a transaction, no longer a search for completion. It becomes a natural state of being. You love not because of what you get, but because that is what life does when it knows itself. You find yourself moved by compassion, not out of duty, but out of recognition. You see yourself in everything, in the stranger's eyes, in the trembling leaf, in the child's laughter, in the grief of loss. Love becomes as effortless as breathing. And this love cannot be lost because it was never dependent on conditions. It flows because you exist. And then comes the greatest paradox of all. The more you surrender your life, the more alive you feel. The more you release your need to control, the more powerful you become. Because power, in its truest sense, is not domination, it's alignment. It's the power of the river that moves mountains, not by force, but by persistence. The awakened person is like that river. They don't fight obstacles, they flow around them. They don't resist change, they become change. They move with such ease that what once seemed impossible now happens effortlessly. That is the gain that can never be lost, the power that comes from no longer needing to be powerful. And as you live in this way, you begin to see that everything that happens, even what seems terrible or senseless, fits perfectly into the whole. You stop asking, why me? And begin to ask, why not me? For you are part of the total movement of life. You are not a mistake in it, you are it. This realization does not make you passive, it makes you deeply alive. You become more responsive, more present, more in tune with the subtle cues of existence. You begin to sense what life is asking of you in each moment, and you respond naturally without hesitation. You don't have to plan your authenticity. It simply expresses itself. Sometimes people think awakening will make them separate from the world, as though they will float above it all in eternal peace. But the truth is just the opposite. Awakening brings you closer to everything. You begin to taste the rawness of life, the salt and the sweetness together. You cry more easily, laugh more deeply, love more honestly, because you are no longer afraid of feeling. You are no longer hiding behind defenses. You are open, unguarded, and that vulnerability is strength itself. You discover that to be fully human is not to escape life, but to embrace it completely. Now, you may wonder, if everything is perfect as it is, what's the point of doing anything at all? Why act? Why strive? Why care? And the answer is very simple, because that is what life does. Life creates, moves, evolves, and expresses itself endlessly. The awakened person does not act to reach a goal. They act because it is their nature to do so. The flower blooms not to impress anyone, but because blooming is what it does. The bird sings not to win applause, but because song is its essence. In the same way, your actions, when aligned with awareness, are no longer forced. They are spontaneous expressions of life's intelligence. They need no justification. This is what true purpose feels like. Not a rigid plan, but a flowing expression. You realize that you don't need to find your purpose. You need only to remove the noise that hides it. The purpose of life is not something given to you. It is what you give to life through your being. Every smile, every act of kindness, every moment of awareness is an offering. You are not here to conquer the world. You are here to be the world in conscious form. And slowly, gratitude begins to color everything you experience. You start to feel thankful even for the ordinary, the mundane, the things you once ignored. You wake up in the morning and notice the warmth of the blanket, the sound of the wind, the breath in your lungs. You realize that every single moment is a gift, not because it's pleasant, but because it exists. Gratitude is the natural fragrance of awareness. You don't have to practice it. It arises effortlessly when you are truly present. It's not something you say, it's something you feel in your bones. As this gratitude deepens, life becomes luminous. Even the simplest actions shine with quiet significance. Drinking a cup of tea, watching the sky change color, walking down the street, each becomes an act of participation in the mystery. You begin to see that enlightenment was never about escaping the world, but about seeing it clearly, seeing it as divine, even in its ordinariness. The awakened person doesn't need to go anywhere else. Heaven is not a destination. It's the realization that this, right now, is sacred. And then one day, without fanfare, you find that your search has ended. You no longer wake up asking, how do I become awakened? Because you understand that there was never anyone to awaken. The seeker and the sought were one and the same all along. The game of becoming has dissolved, leaving only being, and being is enough. You no longer measure your worth by what you achieve or what others see. You rest in the quiet certainty that to exist is the ultimate success. This, you see, is what awakened people gain that they can never lose. It's not a special state, not a mystical power, but a simple, profound intimacy with life. The gain is not something added. It's the removal of the illusion that you ever lacked. You have always been whole, always been free, always been the dance itself. The clouds may come and go, but the sky remains untouched. So what does it mean, really, to awaken? It means to stop pretending, to stop chasing the mirage of a future that never arrives, to stop believing that happiness depends on what happens. It means to relax into the mystery, to trust the unfolding, to realize that this moment, just as it is, contains the entire universe. You have nothing to gain because you were never missing anything. And in that realization, the search ends, not with a bang, but with a smile. That is the quiet laughter of awakening. It is the sound of life recognizing itself. It is the joy of a wave, realizing it was never separate from the sea. And once you hear that laughter, truly hear it, you know there is nothing left to fear, nothing left to chase, nothing left to lose. You are home, and you always were. Most of us live as though time were a straight line, stretching from the distant past, through the fleeting present, into the unknown future. We are taught to imagine ourselves as travelers along this line, beginning with birth, moving through childhood, adulthood, and finally ending at death. And because we see it this way, we spend much of our lives trying to get somewhere else. We long to reach the next point on the line, the promotion, the relationship, the success, the retirement, as if the meaning of our existence always lies just ahead. But what if this picture is entirely wrong? What if time is not a line at all, but a trick of perception, a useful convention that we mistake for reality? What if the past and the future are not places we can ever truly visit, but rather ideas, shadows, abstractions that exist only in thought? Consider the past. You may remember it vividly. The warmth of your childhood home, the smell of your grandmother's cooking, the sound of laughter echoing in a familiar room. But where is that now? You cannot hold it, you cannot touch it. It exists only as a memory, a trace in the present mind. And the future, the great destination we are all hurrying toward, is even more elusive. It has never arrived, and when it does, it is no longer the future. It is simply another present moment, just as ordinary, just as immediate as this one. So the only reality you ever truly know is the present. And yet, how rarely do we inhabit it? Instead, we live in stories about the past and fantasies about the future, carrying regrets and anxieties like heavy luggage on a journey that never leaves the station. Time, then, is not so much a thing, but a way of thinking. It is a lens through which we view change, a measurement we impose on the flow of experience. The clock ticks, the calendar flips, and we believe we are moving forward, step by step. But in truth, the movement is not in time. The movement is in ourselves. The present moment is eternal. It never began, and it will never end. What changes is our attention, our awareness, shifting like the beam of a flashlight over the vast field of now. If you look carefully, you will notice that you never experience time itself. You experience only sensations, thoughts, emotions, each one arising and fading within this is never in one note alone, but in the relationship between them. Likewise, life is not a series of isolated moments, but a flowing rhythm. And in that rhythm, the only place you ever stand is the present. But we resist this truth because we are addicted to becoming. We want to be something more than what we are now. We say, one day I'll be happy, one day I'll arrive. And in chasing that arrival, we miss the only arrival there has ever been. For when you look closely, you see that there is no traveler and no line of time. There is only the eternal unfolding of this very moment. Think of it like a wave in the ocean. You might say the wave begins here and ends there. But in reality, the wave is not a thing separate from the ocean, it is the ocean waving. In the same way, what you not as a stepping stone to somewhere else, but as the very essence of life. For the illusion of time is that it tempts us to live everywhere but here. And the truth of life is that here is all there has ever been. We live in a culture that worships the clock. Our days are chopped into hours, our hours into minutes, our minutes into seconds. We rise when the alarm rings, we eat by the schedule, we work by the calendar, and when the evening comes, we collapse into bed to prepare for another cycle. Life becomes a timetable, a program to be run. And so we mistake the measure for the thing measured. We believe that time is real because we have become servants of the instruments designed to track it. But tell me, have you ever touched a minute? Have you ever seen an hour lying on the street? These are not realities. They are symbols, abstractions, agreements we made with one another to coordinate our lives, and yet we live as though they were masters, as though they held power over our very being. This creates a peculiar anxiety, because if time is real, then it is always running out. Each tick of the clock becomes a step toward loss, loss of youth, loss of opportunity, loss of life itself. We chase after time the way a dog chases its tail, never catching it, never resting. And so we speak of killing time, of wasting time, of saving time, as though time was some great treasure stored in a vault. But time cannot be saved, nor wasted, nor killed. It can only be imagined. You see, the future you are hurrying toward will never come. When it does, it will not be the future, it will be now. And the past you cling to has already dissolved, except as a thought arising here. This present moment is not something moving along a line, like a bead sliding on a string. It is the whole string itself, appearing as a bead for a moment, then another, and another, yet never leaving the fullness of being. The more you chase after what is not here, the more you miss the wonder, that island. It is like standing in the middle of a garden, surrounded by flowers in bloom, and yet staring at your watch, waiting for the right moment to look up. The flowers do not wait, they open now. But perhaps the greatest trick of time is the way it builds the illusion of a separate self. For we imagine ourselves as entities with a beginning in the past and an ending in the future, stretched like a thread across the loom of time. We say, I was born then, and I will die then. But look closely. You never experienced your birth. You will never experience your death. You know only this moment, and in this moment, you are not a fixed identity. You are an ever-changing pattern of sensations, thoughts, and perceptions, none of which remain for more than a fleeting instant. So, who, then, are you? You are not the child you once were, for that child exists only in memory. You are not the elder you imagine becoming, for that image exists only in fantasy. You are not even the you of a moment ago, for that thought has already vanished. You are, in truth, the awareness in which all of these forms appear and disappear. You are the timeless witness of time's illusion. When this realization dawns, a curious thing happens. Life ceases to feel like a journey with a destination and begins to feel like music being played. You no longer listen to the symphony in order to reach the final note, for the value is in the unfolding of the melody. You no longer dance to arrive at some final step, for the joy is in the movement itself. And so you see that existence is not a race to be won, but a song to be sung, a dance to be danced, endlessly, without purpose other than itself. To live without being bound by time is not to abandon all plans or calendars. It is simply to remember that these are conveniences, not truths. You may still make an appointment, but you no longer mistake the appointment for life itself. You may still mark a birthday, but you no longer believe you are merely the number of years measured. For you know that what you truly are is beyond all measurement, beyond all counting. You are the timeless presence in which time appears. And when you live from this recognition, something profound shifts. The anxiety of running out, the fear of missing out, the constant hunger for the next moment, all of this softens. You begin to see that you have never left this moment, and you never will. Eternity is not a long stretch of endless time. Eternity is the absence of time. Eternity is now. So do not wait for the future to give you what you already possess. Do not cling to the past as though it could return. Look instead at what is here. Feel the breath as it enters and leaves. Hear the sounds as they arise and fall. Notice the thoughts as they flicker and vanish. All of it is happening in the only place it could, this eternal present. And once you see this, time becomes play. You can wear a watch, you can follow a schedule, you can meet a deadline, but you do it lightly, knowing it is all part of the dance. For beneath it all, the truth is unchanged. There is no past, there is no future, there is only the miracle of now. And in that miracle, you are free. It is a curious thing how certain words, certain ideas, certain encounters arrive in our lives at precisely the moment they are most needed. You may wander for years without noticing them, pass them by in books, or hear them spoken in conversations without giving them a second thought. And then, suddenly, one day, the very same words strike you like a bell. They sink in as though they had been waiting all along for this particular instant, as though they had been whispering on the edge of your awareness, patient until you were ready to hear. It is almost uncanny, as if the universe itself had arranged a meeting between you and a truth that had been hiding in plain sight. People often imagine that wisdom works like information, that you can simply accumulate it as you do facts in a textbook. But real wisdom does not behave this way. You cannot force it into the mind by will alone, because wisdom is not simply knowledge. It is recognition, a shift in perspective, a new way of seeing what has always been there. And recognition cannot be hurried. Just as you cannot command a seed to sprout before its season, you cannot make a truth blossom within you until something within you is prepared. The soil of your life must be turned, softened, made ready by experiences, by struggles, by longings you cannot quite name. Only then does the seed crack open. Only then does the teaching find you. We do not like to admit this because it challenges our sense of control. We prefer to imagine that we are the masters of our growth, that we can schedule our awakenings as we schedule our appointments. But have you ever noticed that the most important lessons of your life never arrived according to your plans? They arrived through detours, accidents, heartbreaks, moments of despair. They came when you thought you were lost, when you thought you had failed, when you had given up hope. And it was in precisely those moments that something opened a window, a crack, a ray of light breaking through. What once sounded trivial suddenly became profound. What once was invisible suddenly became undeniable. In this sense, the message that reaches you is not external at all. It is not that some stranger's voice, some book, some lecture suddenly becomes magical. It is that you, in your vulnerability, have been prepared to hear it. You and the message are two sides of the same event, inseparable, like the crest and the trough of a single wave. If you had encountered the same words yesterday, they might have meant nothing. If you had encountered them tomorrow, they might have passed you by. But here, now, at this exact moment, they land, they strike. And something in you recognizes that they could not have come a moment sooner or later. This recognition is unsettling because it suggests that our lives are not purely random nor purely controlled. They move in a mysterious rhythm that we only notice in hindsight. We recall how one encounter led to another, how one disappointment cleared the way for a new opportunity, how one loss prepared us for a deeper love. And in that remembering, we see that what looked like chaos was in fact a kind of dance, as if life itself were weaving a pattern too vast for us to see all at once. When you look back, do you not find that the teachings that mattered most came when you were struggling most? When everything seemed to fall apart, when the future looked uncertain, when you no longer trusted yourself, that is when you were most ready. In comfort, you did not listen. In ease, you did not notice. But in suffering, your defenses cracked, your certainties dissolved, and you became porous enough for something new to enter. It is not that suffering is desirable for its own sake, but that it humbles us, it opens us, it breaks the shell we have built around ourselves. And in that opening, wisdom slips in like water into dry earth. This is why we can say that the teaching finds you, but only because you were also moving toward it all along. Like two rivers flowing from distant mountains, winding separately through valleys and forests, meeting at last in the same sea. You may not have known you were flowing toward this meeting, but the currents of your life carried you here. Every mistake, every success, every heartbreak and joy, each was shaping the channel, deepening the riverbed, until at last the meeting could take place. And when it does, it feels inevitable, as though it had been written in the very grain of reality. We call this synchronicity, or fate, or providence. But these are only words for a deeper mystery, that life itself is not fragmented, but whole. You and the teaching are not separate, not strangers meeting by accident. You are part of the same process, the same unfolding. The words you now hear are not external instructions imposed upon you. They are the echo of your own innermost self, finally reaching your conscious ear. It is like a mirror showing you your own face, which you had somehow forgotten. And when you see it, you realize you have known it all along, But do not think that this recognition means you have now arrived once and for all. For just as one seed sprouts and grows, so another waits in the soil. Life continues to unfold, and new lessons will find you, each at the moment of ripeness. You cannot rush them, and you cannot avoid them. You can only trust that they will come as surely as the seasons change, as surely as the tide returns. To be alive is to be in conversation with reality, and reality never ceases to speak. The irony is that the harder you search for these teachings, the more they seem to evade you. You read desperately, listen endlessly, seek feverishly, and yet feel nothing. And then, when you least expect it, when you have given up searching, when you are simply quiet, they arrive. Why is this? Because seeking with desperation is a kind of grasping, a kind of tension that prevents you from truly hearing. But when you surrender, when you stop demanding that life provide answers on your timetable, you create the space for answers to arise. It is like trying to catch a reflection in water. Stir it with your hand, and the image is distorted. Let it become still, and the reflection appears by itself. So, if you are hearing these words now and they strike you as true, know that it is not an accident. It is not because I have spoken them with special power, but because you are ready. Something in your life has ripened, something in you has softened, and these words land in that soil. And if you are hearing them and they do not yet resonate, that too is not an accident. They may be seeds that lie dormant for now, waiting for the season of your need. Either way, life is at work, in its own time, in its own mysterious rhythm. What matters is not to cling to the words, but to trust the process. Words are only fingers pointing to the moon, never the moon itself. They are signposts along the way, but the way itself is walked in your own steps, in your own life. The teaching does not live in books or lectures or voices, but in the living movement of your awareness. And the awareness that hears these words now is the same awareness that will carry you through every moment to come. You may believe that when a teaching arrives at the right moment, it is because someone else has given you something you lacked. You imagine that wisdom is outside, waiting to be handed down, like a gift wrapped and delivered from another place. But if you look more deeply, you will see that what truly happens is recognition. The words may come from another, but the truth they awaken is your own. It is like seeing your reflection in a mirror. The mirror does not give you a face. It only shows you what was already there. This is why the teachings that move us most often feel strangely familiar. You hear them and you say, "Yes, I knew this, though I never put it into words." You feel as though something you had forgotten is suddenly remembered. And that feeling of remembering is the mark of real wisdom, because wisdom is not the adding of something foreign, but the uncovering of what was hidden. The seed was always in you. The words, the teacher, the moment of crisis were only the rain that awakened it. In this way, life itself is the teacher. Every joy, every sorrow, every accident and triumph is part of the curriculum. Sometimes the lesson comes gently, like a friend offering a hand. Sometimes it comes harshly, like a storm tearing away what you clung to. But always it comes when you are ready to receive it, whether or not you realize you are ready. You may resist, you may protest, you may even despair, and yet when you look back later, you see that the timing was perfect, that without that experience you would never have awakened to the truth that now sustains you. To see this is to relax the grip of fear. For most of us spend our lives afraid that we are missing out, that we are behind, that we should have already known, already succeeded, already become. But life is not late, nor is it early. It is always on time. The message arrives when it is needed, not when the ego demands it. And so the teaching you hear now, at this exact moment, is precisely what belongs to you now. Tomorrow, another will come, and so it goes, endlessly unfolding, endlessly ripening. Think of the seasons. The tree does not bear fruit in winter, nor does it cling to its leaves in autumn. Each stage has its own necessity, its own beauty. In the same way, your life unfolds in seasons of growth, of loss, of waiting, of abundance. To demand fruit when the branches are bare is to suffer needlessly. To trust the cycle is to see that nothing is wasted, nothing is out of place. Even the falling of the leaves, even the emptiness of winter is part of the renewal. So too with the teachings that reach you. They come in their season, not before, not after. They come when you are open enough, tender enough, broken enough, or strong enough to hear them. And when they come, they awaken in you not something alien, but the deeper part of yourself that was waiting to be remembered. The truth has always been yours. The timing is life's. And perhaps this is why we often say, the universe is speaking to me. What we mean is that we sense an uncanny fit between our inner need and the outer event. A phrase in a book, a line in a song, a chance conversation, it lands with such precision that it feels orchestrated. But the orchestra is not outside you. It is the unity of inside and outside. The recognition that what appears in the world and what arises in you are not two, but one. The synchronicity is not a message sent from elsewhere, but the expression of wholeness revealing itself. If you can see this, then you realize that nothing is ever truly wasted. Even the messages you ignored years ago, even the teachings that seemed meaningless at the time, are part of the unfolding. They were seeds scattered in the soil. Some sprouted quickly, others lay dormant, waiting for rain. And when the rain comes, even decades later, the seed awakens as though no time had passed. Life does not forget. It waits. This understanding changes how you approach the present. Instead of grasping desperately at every teaching, fearing that you must capture them all, you can relax. What is meant for you will not miss you. What you are not ready for will simply pass by, and that too is fine. You do not need to force the process. You only need to live attentively, to be present, to allow life to work upon you as it always has. The rest will take care of itself. And here lies the final paradox. When you see that the message always finds you when you most need it, you realize that you never needed the message at all. For what it points to is the awareness that has always been here, the awareness listening now, the awareness that is the thread running through every moment of your life. The teaching is not the truth, you are. The words are only reminders, echoes, invitations. What they awaken is the recognition that you are inseparable from life, that you are the dance itself, not a separate dancer trying to learn the steps. Imagine for a moment that life is a vast ocean. Each wave rises, falls, and dissolves back into the sea. A wave does not need to be told how to rise or how to fall. It is carried by the ocean's movement. In the same way, you do not need to be told how to live. You are already living. You are already the expression of life's movement. The teachings that reach you simply remind you of what you already are, the ocean waving here and now. And when you see this, the anxiety begins to dissolve. You no longer worry that you are behind, that you have missed your chance, that the wisdom you needed has passed you by. For how could you miss what you already are? How could you be late to your own being? Whatever comes, comes in its time. Whatever does not come was never meant for this season. To trust this is to rest in the unfolding, to surrender the constant demand for answers, and to discover that the answers are already present in the silence of awareness itself. So, when you hear these words, take them not as instructions to be followed, but as reminders of what you already know. Let them wash over you as waves wash the shore, not grasping, not clinging, not analyzing. If they resonate, it is because the time has come. If they do not, it is because another time will. Either way, life is speaking and you are listening, because you and life are not two. You are the same movement, the same mystery, the same awareness looking at itself through countless eyes, and perhaps that is the deepest teaching of all, that nothing is missing, nothing is wasted, nothing is out of place. The message finds you when you most need it, because you and the message are the same. The giver and the receiver are one. The timing is perfect because there is no other time. There is only this, now, endlessly appearing, endlessly sufficient. There comes a moment, often quietly, when you realize you no longer know what you're doing. Not in the sense that you've forgotten your plans, but in the deeper sense when all the plans you've made stop making sense. You wake up one morning, and though nothing looks different, everything feels different. The job, the relationships, the daily routines, all the things that once gave you a sense of direction suddenly feel hollow, like a script you've memorized but no longer believe in. And the strangest thing about it is that it doesn't always come with sadness. Sometimes it's just a blankness, a strange, gentle emptiness, where the meaning used to be. You move through your day as though underwater, hearing people speak, watching yourself respond, but somewhere inside knowing that none of it feels alive anymore. This is the moment when most people panic, because for so long we've been taught that purpose is everything, that life must always be aimed towards something, a goal, a mission, a destination. We spend years building an identity around what we do, what we achieve, what we produce. So when the compass stops pointing anywhere, it feels like the end of something essential, but it isn't the end. It's the beginning. You see, this confusion, this uncertainty, is not a mistake in the system. It is the system. Life has a way of dissolving the structures we outgrow. It takes away the illusions we cling to until we finally notice that they were illusions. It removes the things we think we can't live without, and in doing so, reveals that we were never living through them to begin with. To not know what you're doing anymore is to stand at the threshold of a deeper truth, because only when the outer purpose collapses can the inner purpose emerge. Only when you stop knowing with your mind can you start listening with your being. Most people try to escape this stage. They distract themselves, fill the silence with noise, or rush to find a new project, a new meaning, a new dream to chase. But the more you run, the more lost you become. The feeling doesn't leave because it isn't meant to. It's not a symptom of something wrong. It's an invitation, a call from life itself to stop pretending you're in control. Think of the ocean. When the waves crash, the surface looks chaotic, unpredictable. But deep down, the water is still. When you lose your sense of direction, you are being pulled downward into that stillness. The storm of the mind begins to lose its power, and something quieter begins to appear beneath it. But because we've spent our lives identifying with the storm, we fear the calm. The mind says, if I stop chasing, I'll fall behind. If I stop knowing, I'll disappear. Yet the truth is that the one who feels lost was never the real you. The self that needs direction is only the surface self, the mask that performs for the world. The one beneath it doesn't need direction at all, because it never left home. This is why the ancient teachers spoke of the power of not knowing. Because to not know is to become teachable again. It is to return to innocence, not ignorance, but openness. The kind of awareness a child has when they look at the world without trying to control it. When you are no longer certain of what you're doing, life begins to show you what it's been doing all along. You begin to see that things move by themselves, that the heart beats, the lungs breathe, the planets spin, the seasons change, all without your interference. You begin to realize that the world is not asking you to manage it. It's asking you to participate in it. And there's a vast difference between the two. Participation means allowing yourself to be moved by life, not pushing it forward with effort and will. It's dancing with the rhythm rather than dictating the steps. And that's why losing your sense of direction can feel so disorienting, because you're shifting from being the choreographer to being the dancer. When you reach this stage, the mind tries to bargain. It says, if I can just understand what's happening, I'll feel safe again. But life doesn't owe you understanding. It offers you something far more profound experience. And understanding comes later, in the quiet moments when you realize that what felt like loss was actually transformation in disguise. Every meaningful change begins in confusion. Caterpillars do not know they are becoming butterflies. They simply dissolve. The same is true for you. The life you thought you were building is dissolving so that a more truthful one can emerge, not designed by your mind, but discovered by your being. So, when you find yourself in that fog, don't rush to clear it. Sit with it. Let it unfold at its own pace, because that fog is not a failure of clarity. It's the very process by which clarity arrives. You might look around and think everyone else knows what they're doing, but they don't. They're just better at pretending. Most people are following scripts written by fear, fear of being left behind, fear of insignificance, fear of stillness. You, however, have stepped off the stage. You've stopped acting long enough to hear the silence beneath the performance. And though it feels uncertain now, that silence is where the real music begins. Because the truth is, you don't need to know what you're doing to live a meaningful life. You only need to be here, aware, receptive, willing. The rest unfolds naturally. Think of how flowers bloom. They don't calculate the right moment. They open when the sun touches them. The same intelligence that moves the tides and births the stars is guiding your unfolding too. It doesn't need your constant interference. It needs your trust. This is the paradox of awakening, that we try so hard to find meaning, not realizing that meaning is what's trying to find us. It's been knocking on your door, waiting for you to stop rearranging the furniture long enough to hear it. You are not lost. You are simply being stripped of what can no longer come with you. And if you can stay open even when it hurts, even when it's unclear, you'll notice something miraculous happening. You'll stop trying to force the river and begin to flow with it. You'll realize that life was never something to solve, but something to experience. And then, without warning, you'll find yourself smiling again, not because you figured it out, but because you finally stopped trying to. You'll see that you were never meant to know every step of the path. You were only meant to walk it, one moment at a time, with wonder instead of control, with openness instead of certainty. And in that simple surrender, you'll rediscover something you forgot long ago, that not knowing is the most alive state there is. Because when you don't know what you're doing anymore, you are closer than ever to remembering who you really are. There comes a quiet moment after the confusion, when something in you stops struggling to make sense of it all. The mind, exhausted from trying to understand, begins to soften. And in that softening, you start to notice that life is still happening beautifully, rhythmically, indifferently. The trees still sway, the clouds still move, the wind still carries the scent of the earth. The same world that felt meaningless yesterday now begins to breathe with a strange kind of peace. Because the truth is, meaning never left you. You just buried it under the noise of needing to be someone. You thought purpose was something you could think your way into, when in fact it was something you could only return to. It was always there, beneath the tension, beneath the pretending, waiting for you to stop trying so hard to deserve it. There is an intelligence far older than your mind that has been guiding you since before you were born. It beats your heart, it grows your bones, it keeps you alive even when you forget to live. It doesn't need your permission or your plan. It only asks for your attention, not the kind that analyzes, but the kind that sees. You begin to realize that you were never supposed to figure life out, only to experience it fully. You were never supposed to have it all together. You were supposed to fall apart again and again until you saw that there was never anything to hold together in the first place. The falling was always part of the dance. When you stop trying to control the dance, life starts moving through you like music. You stop counting the steps. You start to feel the rhythm. And somewhere between the notes, between the breaths, you remember what you are. You are not the dancer. You are the dance itself. But this realization doesn't arrive with fireworks or revelation. It comes quietly, like the first light before dawn. You notice you're no longer rushing to escape yourself. You're no longer trying to trade this moment for another. You're simply here breathing, watching, existing. And that, you realize, has always been enough. You start to see that the moments you once called meaningless were never empty. They were simply unobserved. Life wasn't waiting to become significant. You were waiting to become present. And in that presence, even the smallest things begin to glow, the way sunlight dances on water, the way laughter spills out of nowhere, the way time slows down when you stop wishing it would move faster. These are not ordinary moments. They are the fabric of life itself, woven together by a quiet intelligence that asks for nothing in return. You once thought you needed a map to live. Now you realize you only needed to look around. You once believed you needed to understand your path. Now you see that the path itself was understanding you. Every detour, every delay, every collapse, it was all part of life's mysterious way of leading you home. You see, when you no longer know what you're doing, you finally allow life to do what it's been doing all along. You begin to trust the current instead of fighting it. You begin to rest, not in certainty, but in faith, not the kind of faith that believes in something, but the kind that simply allows everything. And it's here, in this quiet permission, that your life begins to breathe again. Because the truth is, clarity doesn't come from understanding everything. It comes from accepting that you never will. Peace doesn't come from solving your problems. It comes from seeing that you are not a problem to solve. When you stop forcing yourself into shapes that please the world, you realize the world was never asking you to change. It was only reflecting back your own misunderstanding of who you are. You are not behind. You are not lost. You are not late to anything. You are exactly where you were always meant to be in this moment, aware, alive, unfolding. And perhaps that's what you were meant to learn all along, that life was never about becoming something, but about remembering that you already are everything you've been searching for. When this realization begins to settle in, you notice something beautiful. You no longer crave answers the way you used to. The questions remain, but they no longer torment you. They simply exist, like stars scattered across the night, silent, mysterious, and somehow perfect in their distance. You no longer need to define yourself, because you understand that whatever can be defined is not truly you. You no longer cling to roles or labels, because you sense how fluid you've always been. You no longer try to fix the uncertainty, because you see now that uncertainty is the space where life breathes. You stop needing to be certain to be free. You stop needing to be someone to be whole. And when this happens, a quiet joy begins to bloom, not the loud joy of achievement, but the soft joy of belonging. Belonging to nothing in particular, yet everything at once. You realize you were never separate from the flow you were trying to control. You were the flow itself, dreaming it was lost. And so you sit there, not knowing what's next, and for the first time, that's perfectly fine, because you sense that whatever comes will come through you, not against you. You don't need to chase your next chapter. It's already writing itself, in the silence, in the waiting, in the very act of being alive. This is the grace of not knowing, that it leaves you open enough to finally see. You no longer have to pretend to be the one holding everything together. You can let go and trust that the hands of existence are far steadier than your own. And then, when you least expect it, life begins to move again, gently, effortlessly. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped blocking it. Not because you knew what to do, but because you allowed yourself to not know. You smile at the mystery of it all, the divine comedy of trying to plan infinity, and you understand that you were never lost. You were simply learning how to see again. So when you don't know what you're doing anymore, remember this: you don't need to. Life knows. It always has. And if you listen closely, you'll hear it whisper not in words, but in the rhythm of your own heart, that you are already home. After a while, you begin to notice that not knowing has its own kind of intelligence. It isn't confusion anymore. It's space, a vast, quiet openness that allows everything to be what it is. The mind, once frantic to decide and define, now learns to bow before something it cannot measure. At first, this feels disorienting, almost like losing the ground beneath your feet. You search for the next goal, the next explanation, the next identity that will anchor you again. But none of them fit. They feel too small, too artificial, too loud for the silence that's begun to bloom within you. So you stop chasing certainty, not out of defeat, but out of recognition. You realize that every certainty you've ever clung to has eventually dissolved, and yet something in you has remained untouched, unmoved, quietly aware. That awareness becomes your true home, your quiet refuge in the middle of life's noise. From that stillness, you begin to see the play more clearly. The constant striving, the endless self-improvement, the desperate need to prove your worth, all of it starts to look like a dream you finally awakened from. You smile, perhaps even laugh, at the absurdity of it. Because how could you ever improve upon something that was never broken? This realization does not make life dull. On the contrary, it makes everything radiant. When you stop trying to control the script, you begin to see the beauty of improvisation. You start to notice how every event, even the painful ones, carry a hidden rhythm, how each moment leads to the next, not through force, but through flow. You no longer see life as a staircase to climb, but as a river to enter. The river knows where it's going. You don't have to steer it. All you need to do is trust its current, and it will carry you exactly where you're meant to be. But trust is not passive. It is a living act. It means showing up without guarantees. It means stepping forward without knowing if the ground will appear beneath your feet. It means opening your heart, even when it has been broken before. It means daring to live without the armor of control, to love without the safety of certainty, to walk through the unknown as though it were your own home. In that trust, life begins to meet you halfway. Synchronicities appear not as miracles, but as natural expressions of harmony. You meet the right people at the right time. The opportunities you once chased begin to unfold on their own. You realize that the world was never withholding from you. It was waiting for you to stop resisting it. Something ancient in you awakens, a memory beyond words that existence has always been whole. You begin to see that the purpose of your confusion was never to be solved, but to humble you, to soften you, to open you wide enough to receive what intellect could never grasp. You start to live more gently. You listen more deeply. You speak less often, but with more truth. You become less interested in convincing and more interested in understanding. You see that every person you meet is also walking their own uncertain path, trying to find peace in the mystery, and that understanding breeds compassion. You stop demanding that people be perfect, because you've stopped demanding that of yourself. You stop measuring worth by success, because you've seen how empty success feels when it isn't aligned with being. You stop running from silence, because you've discovered that silence isn't empty, it's alive, like the pause between waves. From here, a new kind of freedom begins to take shape, not the loud freedom of rebellion, but the quiet freedom of alignment. You no longer need to resist life, because you finally realize that you are not separate from it. You no longer need to search for meaning, because you've become meaning itself, unfolding, breathing, existing, without needing a reason. You start to see that what you once called confusion was actually a grace in disguise. It stripped away what was false so that the truth could be felt, not understood. It wasn't chaos. It was clarity taking a slower, more honest form. Now, every ordinary act becomes sacred. Washing a dish, watching the rain, sitting with someone in silence. You feel the same intelligence moving through all of it, not above or beyond life, but within it. You realize that enlightenment was never about escaping the world. It was about coming home to it, as it is. You may still wake up some mornings feeling uncertain, but that no longer frightens you. You've learned to recognize it as a sign that you're alive, because certainty is the end of curiosity, and curiosity is the pulse of existence itself. You begin to thank the very uncertainty you once cursed, because you see how it's guided every step of your journey, not through control, but through connection. It kept you awake, it kept you humble, it kept you human, and perhaps that's the most profound discovery of all, that being human was never a mistake to overcome, but the miracle you were meant to embody. When you stop knowing, you start living. When you stop trying to arrive, you begin to arrive everywhere. When you stop seeking the divine outside of life, you realize it's been hiding inside every moment you ignored. The truth you've been searching for isn't hidden in books or philosophies. It's in the way your breath moves when you finally stop rushing. It's in the warmth of a sunrise you almost missed. It's in the quiet ache that reminds you how deeply you can still feel. Not knowing what you're doing anymore was never the end. It was the invitation, the doorway, the call back to what's real. And maybe that's all awakening truly is, remembering what you already knew before the world taught you to forget. Because the moment you stop demanding that life makes sense, it suddenly does, not in logic, but in wonder. Not in certainty, but in peace. You smile, not because everything is perfect, but because it doesn't need to be. You're no longer waiting to begin. You already have.
Here we are, staring at something that has troubled spiritual men and women for thousands of years. This battle with lust. And the strange thing is, the more awake you become, the more conscious of the divine, the fiercer this battle seems to grow. Why is that? Why should the person who seeks God most earnestly be the very one who wrestles most deeply with desire? Let me tell you what is happening here. And I must warn you, this is not the comfortable sermon you might expect. This is about seeing the whole picture, not just the parts we like to talk about in public. The first thing to understand is this: when you awaken spiritually, when you begin to see life as it truly is, you don't become less human. You become more human. You become more aware of everything. The divine, yes, but also the earthly. The sacred and the profane. The angelic and the animal. Think of it this way. Before awakening, you were like a person walking through life half asleep. Your senses were dulled. Your awareness was clouded. But awakening is like turning up the volume on everything. Suddenly you can hear the birds singing more clearly. You can taste your food more vividly. You can feel the sun on your skin with greater intensity. And yes, you can feel desire more powerfully too. This is the first reason. Spiritual sensitivity amplifies everything. When you open your spiritual eyes, you don't just open them to heaven. You open them to the full spectrum of human experience. The same sensitivity that lets you feel God's presence also makes you more aware of the body's yearnings. The same consciousness that perceives divine beauty also perceives earthly beauty with shocking intensity. The old religious teachers often missed this point. They thought awakening would make you less aware of the flesh, but it's exactly the opposite. A spiritually awake person feels everything more deeply: joy and sorrow, peace and restlessness, love and lust. The heightened state of awareness that comes with spiritual growth doesn't shut down your humanity. It turns up the dial on all of it. So here you are, a person seeking God, and suddenly you find yourself feeling desire more intensely than ever before. And you think something has gone wrong. You think you're falling backward. But actually, you're just becoming more alive, more aware, more fully human. The question is not how to stop feeling. The question is how to be with what you feel without being controlled by it. Now let's look at the second reason. And this one is painful to admit. Those who are spiritually awake often find themselves alone, not because they're better than others, but because they see things differently. They can't engage in the usual conversations anymore. The gossip feels hollow. The endless chatter about nothing feels unbearable. The obsession with status and money and appearances seems like children playing make-believe. And so they drift away from the crowd. Or the crowd drifts away from them. Either way, they end up alone. And loneliness is a very particular kind of hunger. When you have no one to share your thoughts with. When you have no one who understands the things you're seeing. When you're carrying visions and insights that others would think mad, you feel isolated in a way that cuts deep. Lust becomes a kind of bridge back to human connection. Even if it's false connection, even if it's empty connection, at least it's something. At least for a moment you're not alone. The body pressed against another body. The eyes meeting another's eyes. For that brief time, the terrible loneliness lifts. Do you see the trap? The very path that leads you closer to truth also leads you further from the crowd. And the human animal in you cries out for contact, for touch, for the warmth of another. Lust offers a counterfeit solution. It promises connection but delivers only more isolation. Because after the moment passes, you're still alone, often more alone than before. This is why so many spiritual seekers, so many monks and mystics and holy men and women throughout history have struggled in secret with desire. They withdrew from the world to seek God. And they found God, yes, but they also found crushing loneliness. And lust came knocking at the door of that loneliness, offering companionship, even if only for an hour. The third reason is perhaps the most mysterious. When you begin to wake up spiritually, you become a threat. Not to people necessarily, though sometimes to them too. But you become a threat to the forces that keep humanity asleep. Call them what you will. Demons, if you like. The powers of darkness, or simply the momentum of unconsciousness that governs most human life. Whatever you call these forces, they do not want you awake. They do not want you seeing clearly. They do not want you spreading consciousness to others. And so they attack. They probe for weaknesses. They look for ways to pull you back into the dream, back into the trance, back into the endless cycle of grasping and wanting and never being satisfied. Lust is a magnificent weapon for this purpose. Why? Because it works. It really does pull people back into unconsciousness. When you're caught in the grip of lust, when desire is burning through you, you cannot think clearly, you cannot meditate, you cannot pray, you cannot rest in that quiet inner space where God speaks. You are pulled entirely into the body, into sensation, into the fever of wanting something right now. And so the attacks come, stronger and stronger as you grow in awareness. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you're doing something right. You're waking up. And the forces of sleep do not give up their prisoners without a fight. This is what the scriptures mean when they speak of spiritual warfare. It's not a metaphor. It's not poetry. It's the actual experience of anyone who tries to live consciously in an unconscious world. The battle is real. The enemy is real. And lust is one of his favorite weapons because it works so terribly well. The fourth reason is about wounds. Old wounds. Deep wounds. Wounds we carry from childhood. From rejection. From betrayal. From all the ways life has hurt us before we even knew what was happening. Most people walk through life never looking at these wounds. They're too painful. Too frightening. But when you begin to wake up spiritually, you start seeing them. You start feeling them. All the old pain rises to the surface. The abandonment, the shame, the fear of not being loved, the conviction that you're not enough. And here's what happens. Lust offers to soothe these wounds. It offers a temporary balm. When you're in the grip of desire, when you're pursuing or being pursued, you forget the pain for a while. You feel wanted. You feel alive. You feel like maybe, just maybe, you are enough, after all. But it's a lie. Lust doesn't heal wounds, it just covers them up for a moment. Like putting a bandage on a festering sore without cleaning it first. The infection remains, and often grows worse. Because now you've added shame to the wound. Now you've added the knowledge that you're using people, or being used, or both. Now you've added another layer of pain on top of the original pain. The spiritually awake person sees all of this. They see the wound. They see the lust rising to cover it. They see the shame that follows. They see the whole cycle. And seeing it doesn't make it stop. Sometimes seeing it makes it worse. Because now you're aware of what you're doing even while you're doing it. You're conscious of the trap, even as you step into it. Healing these old wounds requires something else entirely. It requires facing them, sitting with them, letting them be felt without running away into distraction or comfort or false connection. This is hard work, the hardest work there is. And many people, even spiritually awakened people, would rather battle lust than do this deeper work of healing. Because at least lust offers moments of pleasure, however brief. The work of healing offers only pain, at least at first. The fifth reason is the most paradoxical of all. The very gifts that make you spiritually powerful also make you vulnerable. When you have heightened sensitivity, when you can feel the divine presence, when you can sense the interconnection of all things, you're operating at a very high frequency. Your consciousness is expanded. Your awareness is vast. But you're still in a body. You're still flesh and blood. You're still subject to all the drives and hungers and needs of the animal self. And here's the strange thing. The higher your consciousness rises, the stronger the pull downward becomes. It's as if the universe seeks balance, as if the very expansion of your spiritual nature creates an equal and opposite pull toward the purely physical. This is why so many spiritual teachers, so many gifted healers and prophets and visionaries have fallen into scandals of the flesh. Not because they were hypocrites, not because their spiritual gifts were fake, but because the combination of high spiritual power and unguarded physical nature creates a dangerous situation. Like a tall building without a foundation. The higher it rises, the more catastrophic the fall. The answer to this is discipline. But not the grim teeth-gritting kind of discipline that feels like punishment. Rather, the discipline of tending to the whole self, spirit and body, mind and flesh. You cannot just soar in the spiritual realms and ignore the needs of the body. You cannot just pray and meditate and expect the physical nature to take care of itself. The body needs to be honored, fed properly, exercised, given rest, given healthy touch and connection, given creative expression. When these needs are met in healthy ways, lust has less power. When they're ignored or denied, lust becomes overwhelming because it's trying to fill too many holes at once. So what do we do with all of this? How do we live with this strange combination of heightened spiritual awareness and powerful physical desire? First, we stop pretending the battle doesn't exist. We stop acting as if spiritual people are supposed to float above all this earthly messiness. The flesh is real. Desire is real. And fighting a real enemy requires acknowledging it's there. Second, we stop fighting alone. The isolation I spoke of earlier is part of the trap. Lust thrives in secrecy. It grows in darkness, when we can find even one other person to be honest with. Someone who won't judge us but will stand with us. The power of lust begins to break. Not because confession is magic, but because isolation is what feeds the beast. Third, we attend to the wounds. This means sitting with the pain instead of running from it. This means feeling the loneliness instead of medicating it with false connection. This means looking at the old rejections and abandonments and letting them be seen and acknowledged. It's painful work, but it's the only work that actually heals. Fourth, we practice presence with our desire without acting on it. This is perhaps the hardest practice of all. When lust rises, the instinct is to either indulge it or suppress it. Both of these are forms of violence. Indulging it leads to shame and emptiness. Suppressing it leads to explosion later. The middle way is to simply be present with the feeling. To feel the heat of desire without having to do anything about it. To notice how it rises and falls like a wave. To observe it the way you might watch a storm from a safe place. This takes tremendous courage. But it's in this space of presence without action that real transformation happens. Not because you're fighting the desire, but because you're neither fighting it nor feeding it. You're just watching it. And in the watching, something shifts. Finally, we remember that we are not this battle. We are not the desire or the shame or the struggle. We are the awareness within which all of this arises. Like the sky that watches the weather pass through, the storms come and go, the clouds gather and disperse, but the sky remains unchanged. When you can rest in this awareness, even for a moment, the battle loses its power to define you. Yes, lust may still arise. Yes, the struggle may continue, but you're no longer identified with it. You're no longer convinced that this struggle is who you are. The spiritually awake struggle with lust not because they're failing, but because they're awake enough to feel the full force of being human. They're sensitive enough to feel every current, every drive, every hunger. And they're isolated enough to face these things often without support or understanding. But this struggle, as painful as it is, can become a teacher. It can show us where we're wounded and need healing. It can reveal our need for real human connection, not false substitutes. It can humble us, reminding us that we're not as far above the flesh as we might like to think. And it can deepen our compassion for every other human being struggling with their own desires and weaknesses. The battle with lust is not a sign that you're spiritually failing. It's often a sign that you're spiritually growing. Growing into a fuller awareness of what it means to be both spirit and flesh. Both divine and animal, both awakened and still very much in the process of learning what that awakening means. So be gentle with yourself. Be honest about the struggle. Seek help when you need it. Attend to your wounds. Practice presence with your desires without being controlled by them. And remember, always remember, that you are not alone in this battle. Every mystic, every saint, every truly awakened person has walked this same difficult path. The flesh is weak, yes, but the spirit